Hello, Professor Raju.
Hello.
How are
Hello.
you? How
I'm
are you,
good.
madam?
I'm fine. I'm Swati. That's why.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't get your name. It's not just me.
I'm, I will rename myself. I'm Professor Amlesh Kanekar.
Amlesh. Okay. Amlesh from you are with Meghnad Desai?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't get your second name. I think
Kanekar.
Kanekar. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Shresti.
And hi, Professor Swati. How are you? Good morning, Professor Amlesh.
I think the rest must be our young researchers, Maithili, Shaunak,
Yes, yes. Subhalakshmi.
Anushka, Aditi, Juhi, Shubhalakshmi. Ladini is competing or she's here to help us?
Ladini is one of the RAs who's been working with us through and through.
Okay.
Good morning, Shresti.
Good morning. How are
First
you?
time my interaction with you. Nice.
Yes.
Fine, thank you. Yeah. So it's 2 minutes to start.
Yes, I think we can get started on time. We'll just wait for a couple of other people to join. I think students are still joining in.
Okay.
Yeah. How many participants do we have? We have 6 teams, right?
Yes, so 12, 13, 12 participants.
Okay. And they are all expected to join from the beginning and stay through all presentations?
Yes, except for one team. No, there's 7 teams, so 14 participants. Except for one team, I think they have an exam, and they'll finish by 11 and then they'll join.
No, so we are judging by teams or we are judging by individuals?
Judging by team.
Okay. 180 minutes makes it 3 hours.
Mhm.
We're
Right?
hoping
Roughly
to,
for them to present.
yes,
And then 5 minutes of discussion.
right.
And who will keep time?
So we have our RAs here. So Ladini is here and we have another RA joining us and both of them will be keeping time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Professor Anirudh has joined. Hi, Anirudh.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Swati ma'am. How are you?
Hi, Anirudh. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Anirudh. We'll just wait for
Okay.
a couple of minutes, yeah, and then we'll
Sure.
get started. Yeah.
Okay, Anshuman has joined. I was told he will be the orchestrator of the proceedings.
Yes. He is. Yeah, I think maybe we can get started. Anshuman, please. take over.
I think Ladini is not here yet.
Oh, Ladini is here. Yes.
Oh, she's here. I actually cannot see her. So, ma'am, just a minute. So everyone is here, right?
Yes, I think we
Yes.
can get started.
Started. Okay. So, first of all, a very good morning to one and all, and welcome to YRC 8th edition. So let's start. So I would like to start by saying that research is seeing what everybody else has already seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. So as a human being, we cannot really avoid being curious about something, especially in the things that are around us. And because of this curiosity, we are making many questions in our minds. So, and research is the key to find the answer to those questions. And research is exactly what gets us as the human race farther. With this introduction, a very good morning to one and all present here. My name is Anshuman, and I welcome you all to the 8th edition of the Young Economist Research Competition. YERC is a research competition held for undergraduate students where they can showcase their talent in research. And this year, we have certain themes for YERC. The first theme being how can green innovation help mitigate climate change? And what are the different types of green innovations that can help create a sustainable future? The second theme being how does gender inequality impact economic dynamics and what comprehensive measures can be explored to unlock economic equality between the genders. The third theme is what impact do geopolitical conflicts have on the world economy and how do these conflicts resonate globally? And the fourth theme is what empirical evidence suggests that India can sustain high rates of growth. The fifth theme is how does artificial intelligence impact economies and what are the various pathways of this impact? So now, before we begin our exciting competition, I would like to introduce the judges who will evaluate the performances of our talented contestants. We are honored and privileged to have you all with us today. We have Professor Anirudh, we have Dr. Swati, and we also have Professor Shishtri with us who will be judging the participants. Now, I would like to call Amle sir to give a few remarks.
Thank you, Anshuman. I don't want to stand in the way of the young scholars too long. You have already said a lot of what needs to be said. Now, from the academy's perspective, I think in the 8th year of YERC, we can say that our objective of giving students a platform to hone their research abilities stands fulfilled. I don't think there is any other competition in India that rivals YERC in its category. The judges, of course, Professor Swati Raju, we are delighted to have her here, a doyen of the Mumbai School of Economics and Public Policy. She brings to the committee all the sagacity and scholarship that years of teaching and research make up. Professor Raju, please accept my humble gratitude for being here to guide the young scholars.
Thank you so much for calling me.
Yeah. And of course, our own Professor Shreshti Rawat and Professor Anirudh Tagat. Dr. Shreshti has completed her PhD at IGIDR, and Dr. Tagat has secured his doctorate from the unique research academy run by IIT Mumbai and Monash University. Now, over the past few years, I have seen from up close these two young scholars teaching and nurturing our young students of economics at MDAE. The outcomes have been resplendent. I hope to see some of our young competitors at MDAE working under these two exuberant scholars. Okay. Lastly, I would like to address our young competitors. They are from the best colleges. I urge all of you not to look at it as a competition. I counsel you to look at it as a collaborative effort wherein determined young minds meet to exchange keen opinions and their competence. And my advice to you in life, if I'm qualified at all to advise you, is that the only competitor you should have is yourself. Okay. Always benchmark today's work that you do against what you achieved until yesterday and try to raise the intellectual bar continuously. Then you will be self-propelled and liberated from the clutches of mindless and insidious competition. in many ways, this is one of the mottos we try to practice at the Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. As I said, I won't stand in your way too long. So thank you all. And as they used to say in ancient Greece, let the games begin. Anshuman, back to you.
Thank you so much for your kind words, sir. Now I would like to call my classmate Ladini to give a formal introduction to the panel of judges who will evaluate the performances of our talented contestants. Ladini, over to you.
Thank you, Anshuman. So, good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists for the 8th edition of the Young Economist Research Competition. Firstly, we have with us Dr. Swati Raju. She's an economist and currently an associate professor at University of Mumbai. She has experience teaching economics at IIT Bombay, Reserve Bank of India, and Endowment in Monetary Economics with the Department of Economics, University of Mumbai, and R.A. Poddar College of Commerce and Economics. Her expertise lies in microeconomics, financial economics, monetary policy, and public economics. She's extensively engaged in writing publications and newspaper articles. Some of her projects include gender assessment of institutional capacity of women's safety in Ahmedabad under the Gujarat Resilient Cities Program, World Bank, and Thane District Human Development Report, Yashada, and her work has been published in distinguished journals like Economic and Political Weekly, Reserve Bank of India Occasional Paper, Central European Review of Economics and Management, and South Asian Journal of Macroeconomics and Public Policy. She's a recipient of Department of Economics for 19 manuscripts of textbooks for Sage and papers for regional and international economics program at University of Mumbai. Dr. Swati has also guided PhD scholars. Today, we are extremely pleased to have her with us and bring her expertise to the discussion at YERC. Next, we have Dr. Anirudh Tagat, a distinguished research author at the Department of Economics, Mount Prayogshala in Mumbai. Dr. Anirudh holds a joint PhD in economics from IIT Bombay and Monash University Research Academy, along with an MSc in economics from the University of Warwick. Previously, he has worked with the Internet Society, CIIE, the World Resource Institute, WRI India, and Institute of Rural Management, Professor Anirudh's expertise extends to academia as well, serving as visiting faculty in economics at NMIMS's Jyoti Dalal School of Liberal Arts and Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. His research prowess is evident through publications in esteemed journals like the Review of Development Economics and the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization. His work has received grant funding from reputable institutions such as the Partnership for Economic Policy, National Council for Applied Economic Research, and the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation. Currently, he holds the position of Deputy Editor at South Asia Research and contributes to the Management Committee at the Journal. Dr. Anirudh's research interests span across intriguing areas such as cross-cultural differences in decision-making, inter-household bargaining, and experimental economics. We are privileged to have him with us today, bringing his expertise to enrich our discussions at YRC. And now it's my extreme pleasure to introduce our next esteemed panelist, Dr. Shreshti Rawat. She is currently an assistant professor in economics at Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics and holds an MA in Development Economics from South Asia University in Delhi and PhD from the Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, Mumbai. Her expertise spans to teaching development, public policy, and applied econometrics. Her academic journey features prominent roles at esteemed institutes like St. Xavier's College and Sarla Modi School of Economics, NMIMS. Serving as a visiting scholar at the United Nations University, wider, WIDER. She has made contributions to global research on inequality in labor markets. She's also a distinguished recipient of the L.K. Deshpande Young Labor Economist Award, recognized at the Indian Society of Labor Economics Conference. We are honored to have Dr. Shreshti join us today, bringing her expertise to YERC. So, dear audience, buckle up for an enlightening journey as we embark on this discussion with the brilliant and diverse panelists and our finalists of YERC 2023-2024 edition. Over to you, Anshuman.
That was a wonderful introduction, Vladini. We are very excited to have you all today to witness some of the brightest and most talented contestants showcase their insights and research findings. Now, before we get started, I would just like to take a moment and give the guidelines for the competition. So, as you already know, each presenter will have 15 minutes to deliver their presentation. And please note that there is a timer that is going on and there will be a buzzer at the end of 10 minutes. That will be a sign that you only have 5 minutes left. And after the 15-minute presentation, it will be followed by a 5-minute Q&A session. And I would also like to request the judges to send the score sheets to the RAs at the email ID yerc@meghnaddesaicademy.org. I will be posting this email in the chat box so that you all can access it. So without further ado, we can't wait to see how our contestants impress our esteemed panel of judges. So the first presenter that we have for the today is Shubhalakshmi Darshini and Sharad Yadav from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar School of Economics University. And their paper title is The Impact of Trade Conflicts on the Global Economy, a case study using the Red Sea trade disruption. Shubhalakshmi and Sharad, over to you and all the best for your presentation.
Hello, good morning. I'll start by sharing my screen. Just take that. Can you see my screen?
Yes, you are perfectly audible and we can see your screen.
All right, thank you. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Shubhalakshmi Darshini, and I'm here today with my research partner, Mr. Sharad Yadav. Thank you for having us at the prestigious Young Economists Research Competition. We're here today to present the findings from our study, which evaluates the impact of trade disruptions on the global economy, taking a close look at the Red Sea trade disruption, which has blocked the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait.
The study primarily monitors shipping traffic and rates along the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, both of which serve as important arteries for global maritime trade. The critical importance of the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in world trade is determined by the need to connect the trade routes between trade centers of Europe and Asia. Despite international efforts, a major security situation emerged in mid-November in the Red Sea and the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, more specifically when Houthi rebels based in Yemen started to target international shipping transiting through the region. In a matter of weeks, the situation escalated, adversely affecting both shipping and trade. The conflict has had major implications on the movement of ships along these waterways, hereby affecting global trade and having economic consequences. The attacks by the Houthis began during November of 2023, and although that were primarily targeting ships with Israeli affiliation, they've moved on to target ships irrespective of country of origin or affiliation, and this had led to an environment of fear along the waterway. I will take you along a brief overview of the Red Sea crisis. The crisis sees its roots in the Yemeni civil war, which led to the rise of the group called Houthis, who took control of Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, which also sits close to the banks of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, hereby giving them control and power to attack and disrupt movement along this critical trade route. As stated earlier, although the attacks stemmed as a response to the Israeli-Hamas conflict, the targets of the Houthis are no more just Israeli affiliation ships, but any ship that moves along the route. The situation escalated further in early January with a massive Houthi attack on January 10, followed on January 12 by the first counterstrike by air on Yemeni territory by US and UK military forces. Between mid-November and mid-February, some 40 Houthi attacks have been carried out on vessels transiting the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden.
Our research methodology involves collecting data from credible sources such as the IMF Portwatch, Clarkson's Research Center, and a few more to understand the patterns and trends of shift in traffic, freight charges, etc., consequent to the attacks. We're looking at data for a period of 6 months till March 2024 to understand this shift. Coming to the findings of our study, it is an established fact that the Suez Canal serves as an important waterway, controlling approximately 1/3 of global container traffic. Despite uncertainty surrounding the full extent of the Red Sea crisis on maritime activities in global supply chains, efforts are being taken by businesses and shipping companies to minimize potential disruptions. We have taken consideration of 3 factors while evaluating the impact of the blockade. Firstly, changes in ship traffic along the route and the next best alternative, the Cape of Good Hope, which lies towards the south of the continent of Africa. Secondly, changes in shipping costs and freight charges. And lastly, an important consequence that is not being spoken about enough, the environmental impact of the rerouting of ships, which leads to a rise in ship speed and hereby higher fuel consumption. Looking at the first finding, the effect on ship traffic and movement along certain trade routes, we see a significant drop in traffic along the Suez Canal, falling by almost half the initial trade volumes before the attack. The rerouting is leading to a rise of almost a fortnight for some of the most important trade routes along Asia and Europe. This is also leading to a drop in trade volumes by almost half the initial value in the traffic along the Cape of Good Hope, rising almost 74%. The rerouting via longer paths also demands more vessels and shipping capacity. Container ships are particularly affected by the rerouting away from the Suez Canal and around the Cape of Good Hope. The extent of trade exposure to disruptions in the Suez Canal depends on its reliance on this strategic maritime passage. Given that container trade dominates the canal's traffic, the response has been swift, with container ships avoiding the Suez and opting for routes around the Cape of Good Hope, with the average number of ships moving via the Suez Canal dropping to a mere 17 ships per day compared to the previous 88 ships per day. Through these graphs, we can see a clear pattern of drop in ship traffic along the waterways of dispute, the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and a significant rise along the movement via the Cape of Good Hope. This matches with our hypothesis of a drop in ship traffic and a rise along alternative routes. The dip occurs at the same time in both the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, starting towards the end of November 2023. We have now a short clip to demonstrate visually the diversion of ships from the Suez Canal to the Cape of Good Hope. As we can see, although previously majority of the ships used to take the Suez Canal, they have now diverted to the south of the continent of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope.
Coming to our second point of study, the impact on shipping and freight rates and its consequent effects on supply chains around the world. Shipping rates have surged almost 100% along major trade routes due to heightened uncertainty and rerouting, which leads to increased waiting time and larger costs for shippers. During the peak time of attacks, December 2023, freight rates spiked $500, showing the largest rise on record. Further, the risk of attacks and heightened uncertainty have led to insurance companies seeking higher risk premium to insure vehicles not only traveling along the Suez Canal, but also through the Cape of Good Hope, due to the risk of pirate attacks of the Horn of Africa. While it was the norm to charge 0.07% of the vessel value to insure previously, it is now 0.7%, rising 10 times, and hence increasing costs for shippers. The disruptions in the Red Sea have caused a significant upheaval in the container industry in the short term. Uncertainty surrounding carriers' decisions regarding Red Sea transits and rerouting options via the Cape. Some vessels departing from Asia were delayed, while others altered their routes, sometimes multiple times, or experienced ad hoc changes in port schedules. Eventually, the majority of the container carriers opted to suspend operations through the Red Sea. leading to clearer logistic parameters such as expected transit times and vessel availability. Companies like IKEA, Danone, and Tesla have disrupted operations owing to supply chain disruptions and a shortfall of components caused by the attacks. Here we can see the data taken from the Shanghai Containerized Freight Index (SCFI) shows the significant rise, about threefold, in shipping charges due to the attacks. As we can see from the spike in the graph, this spike is mainly due to the factors mentioned previously, owing to heightened uncertainty and rerouting, risk in insurance premiums, and increasing costs for shippers. Another important measure of freight rates, the Drewry World Container Index spiked 282% in January 2024 in the height of the attacks. The higher freight rates are a combined result of capacity being absorbed by the longer Cape route, which reduces available slots per unit of time by the additional fuel costs involved in this route due to the longer distance, and by the negative shipping expectations about the unavailability of capacity going forward. Ancillary costs such as insurance have also increased. Here we can see a quick glimpse of the changes in freight charges from November to present day, and we see an average spike of about 3 to 4 times along all these 5 major base ports in the world.
Lastly, we want to lay emphasis on a severe environmental consequence that is not being given enough attention. For over 10 years, the shipping sector has adopted decreasing sailing speeds as a strategy to reduce fuel expenses and address the greenhouse gas emissions associated with ships. However, with the rerouting, shippers are now increasing sailing speeds to cover up for the lost time, and hence, this is leading to rising fuel consumption. While it may not seem daunting, a slight increase of even 1% in the ship speed can lead to a 2.2% rise in fuel consumption. While these numbers are looked at on a global scale, taking into account world shipping traffic, it amounts to a large number which can wash away almost a decade of environmental consciousness that was ingrained into the shipping industry. Further, it is obvious that the large distances are leading to larger greenhouse gas emissions for each round trip. We have taken data for an average trip from Asia to North Europe to demonstrate the change in variables which come as an effect of the change in shipping routes. Large companies are rerouting hundreds of vessels now, and the environmental consequences of this can be huge on a global scale. Therefore, while the shipping industry grapples with operational adjustments to navigate through geopolitical and logistical challenges, it also faces the imperative to address the environmental repercussions of such adaptations.
The recent attacks on cargo ships in the Red Sea have caused significant disturbances to the Indian businesses, particularly those involved in exporting and importing. This has resulted in a sharp increase in container costs, longer transit times due to rerouted shipping routes, and heightened uncertainty. The rise of almost 400% in container costs is leading importers and exporters to rethink multiple plans due to the rise in expenses, and this is disrupting businesses not only in India but also globally. Further, as traders look for alternatives to move goods, they are looking at their transport and following the attacks. The Baltic Air Index rose 6.4%, showing an increase in demand for air cargo, which is a comparatively expensive method of transport compared to ship movement. Egypt, a country that faces dire economic situations presently, is further hurt by the fall in traffic along the Suez Canal, as revenues collected from the Suez Canal account for 2% of Egypt's gross domestic product. According to the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the revenues from the Suez Canal have dropped around 40 to 50%, which affects an already crisis-ridden economy of Egypt.
The crisis in the Red Sea highlights the need for greater flexibility in the global transportation network. The presence of bottlenecks like the Bab el-Mandab and the Red Sea have prompted various initiatives to bypass them due to concerns about navigation security and naval activities. The recent disruptions in maritime trade routes, particularly in the Red Sea, have presented significant challenges for the global shipping industry and supply chains. The blockade and attacks by the Houthi militia have compelled vessels to reroute, leading to higher shipping costs, security risks, and environmental consequences. And this is a stark remark on the limited flexibility that global trade operates on, something which needs to be given more thought. With the trade disruption, it is developing economies that are facing the heat. The trade disruption has led to inflationary pressure, and this mounts stress on the already strained developing countries. In conclusion, the complexities and challenges facing maritime trade routes, particularly in regions such as the Red Sea, highlight the critical need for resilience, adaptability, and collaboration within the global shipping industry. As we've explored, disruptions in these vital passages can have far-reaching impacts on supply chains, shipping costs, security, and environmental sustainability. Collaborative efforts among governments, international organizations, and industry stakeholders are crucial to bolster security measures, mitigate risks, and ensure smooth maritime trade operations. By working together to address these challenges head-on, we can build a more resilient and sustainable maritime transportation network that supports global commerce and economic prosperity for years to come. This concludes our presentation on our study. We are now open for questions from the esteemed panel and the audience.
Srishti, is there any particular order in which we start?
No, ma'am, I think Anirudh had a prompt. If you can also start. I don't think there is any particular order.
Okay, because if there is a pecking order, then we start that way.
No, I think we can just go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically I have just, it's a very interesting topic that both of you all have taken up for the presentation. It's very current and focused, but I have just one thing that, in your conclusion, you have asked, and the major conclusion that you've arrived at is by saying that there should be greater cooperation. But when you have geopolitical conflict, okay, cooperation doesn't, it existed, but there is a conflict now. So what alternative do you suggest? Just making a conclusion to that effect, would have, well, if there was, apart from geopolitical conflict, there were other reasons, like earlier there was a, accident or non-safety reasons in the Suez Canal a few years ago, where the ship had crashed or something like that, you can, but if there's a conflict, you just don't have an alternative, right? So how does it become relevant, your conclusion, in view of the fact that you have studied this in terms of, with respect to a conflict?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. With geopolitical conflicts like this, we see global trade being disrupted. And when we say the need for cooperation, we want major countries to look at it from an angle of global trade and understand what is at stake. What we're also pointing out is the limited flexibility that global trade operates on. For example, the Suez Canal, which is a very narrow canal, is what holds about 1/3 of the global trade in its palms. So what we are looking for is alternatives to such narrow options that allow global trade a little more flexibility. And when we say cooperation, we mean resolution, dispute resolution, so that such disruptions don't last for long, and so that global trade can get back on its feet as soon as possible.
See, I'll just take you one point, Adesina. It would have helped a lot in all your research if you had found out the alternative, because you're saying the Cape of Good Hope, which is what the alternative we currently see, is not a good enough alternative because of distance, environmental impact. So is there any other alternative that is there? One, if that was there, you could have suggested through your literature review, then it would have made sense, because let's assume any two neighbors fight, neighboring countries. They're not going to look at global trade. They're going to look at their own hegemonies and then fight. So that's a small point that I want to make. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We've taken note of that, ma'am. Thank you for your suggestion.
Thanks, thanks for Lakshmi and for your presentation. So I don't have much in ways of questions, because this is not an area in which I've done a lot of work, but I found it very interesting, and I think that I really like the fact that you focused on the environmental impacts towards the end as well, because I think that this is a very important thing that we should be considering alongside, our usual analyses of like economic impacts and things of that sort. So I think that was That's pretty useful. I guess the only question that I had is that if if there was any maybe it was following on from what Professor Swati also spoke about, which is like if there was any past incident or any sort of past similar geopolitical shock in this region, then do we have any evidence or do we have any understanding of what the impact of that was, so that we can kind of benchmark it against this? So if you, I don't know if there's anything in the literature, if any other previous research paper has done this, but I just wanted to hear more about that. And I think the other thing was only about, if there is any way in which we can understand the sort of headline sort of figure on what is the impact on the GDP of the region or of those countries that might be sort of major trade partners and things like that. So just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, as we noted, Egypt, which operates the Suez Canal, they have seen a 40 to 50% drop in their revenues from the transit of ships and containers through the Suez Canal, which the revenues account for around 2% of Egypt's GDP. And as Egypt is already struggling with a lot of, they have under an economic crisis, and this hurts them a lot. Major companies like IKEA, Danone, and Tesla, Maersk, they have also been facing supply chain disruption. And as Dr. Swati pointed out, that an alternative to the Suez Canal. So there have been talks about, as we know, global warming is taking effect, and the water, the Arctic is melting. So there have been a lot of talks about using another alternative trade routes from Beijing to Europe through the Arctic. So that is not a very major, that is not what we are not focusing yet, but that is one alternative that has been proposed.
Further, you were asking about any such similar conflict that had taken in the past. Well, you can't call it a conflict, but in 2020, the Evergreen ship blockade in the Suez Canal had happened. But the difference between that blockade and this blockade is that that blockade had a timeline within which you could see it getting sorted. It was a non-violent blockade that had taken place. It was an accident. But with the Red Sea blockage caused by the Houthis, the shippers don't have any tentative timeline by when they can expect it to get cleared. And secondly, it's a violent blockade. The Houthis have not given us any agenda. They've not told who they're specifically targeting. Because right now, although before it was just Israeli ships, now it is any ship that passes by the Bab el Mandab Strait, as they want to mount global pressure. So previous incident similar to this that you could say was the Evergreen blockade of the Suez Canal.
Thanks, Shubhalakshmi. Thanks, Sharad.
Okay, I'll just, I have a very quick question. I think because part of my question was already asked by Anirudh regarding like any previous event that has happened, similar event. So my question is regarding the analytical bit of your paper. So in quite a few slides, you've given estimates and statistics regarding, for instance, Drewry World Container Index. So I wanted to know, is there something that you have collated from a data? Is there something that you, this index was already collated, or is this something that you did as part of the research?
The Drewry World Index is already computed. It is present on the website of the Drewry World Index. It is not something that we computed as part of the research. It is the data from the movement in the Drewry World Index is what we used to analyze the changes in shipping rates and freight rates, but it is not something that we came with.
And also like you have this, you had the slides on the consequences of a slide based on the consequences. So there also you've given quite a few estimates regarding how much, for instance, how much did the freight charges changed and percentage changed. Again, just wanted some clarification. Was that some estimation that you did in the paper, or was that also taken from
the estimations that we've arrived at is from data that we've looked at from the Shanghai Containerized Freight Index, the Drewry World Index, but the estimations, the changes in all of that were calculated by us.
Okay. Because I think in the flow of the presentation, it wasn't exactly clear as to what was taken from a pre-existing data set and what was.
All the calculations that have been presented, the changes, etc., are all computed by us.
Okay.
All we have taken is the data present. The calculations and the estimates are calculated by us.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to. I had just had a clarification question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this certainly was an enlightening start. That was a really good presentation. Thank you so much for your presentation. And also, I would like to remind that everyone that there is a time limit, a 15-minute time limit and a 5-minute question from the judges. So now moving ahead, we will now proceed to our next presenters, Anushka Nair and Juhi Parmar from ICFAI Hyderabad. And their paper title is Unlocking India's Economic Potential, the Dynamic Interplay of Foreign Direct Investment, Economic Growth, Inequality, and Human Development Index. Anushka and Juhi, over to you. Best of luck.
Thank you so much, Anshuman. We'll share our screen in a minute. Hope our screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Hello.
Yeah. Your screen is visible. Please continue.
All right. Good morning, distinguished judges, esteemed participants. Today, my teammate Anushka and I are thrilled to present our research paper on the pivotal role of the foreign direct investment in India's economic growth. With dedication and passion, we have explored the intricacies of FDI inflows, aiming to shed light on their transformative impact. We are honored to be here as the finalist of Young Economist Research competition conducted by Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. And we are eager to share our insights for more inclusive and sustainable economic future. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So the purpose of our paper is to determine the interdependency of FDI and India's economic growth for the post-reform period spanning for 30 years, that is 1991 to 2021. The primary focus is on assessing the impact of FDI on economics, GDP growth rate, and along with that, we have seen its implications on inequality, poverty, and human development index. We have tried to cover these three major areas. So coming to the introduction, since 1991 LPG reforms, FDI has been one of the major driver in India's economic growth, facilitating increased participation in the global economy and fostering globalization of Indian industries. FDI has also significantly contributed to sectors like telecommunication, retail, and manufacturing, which has led to technological advancements, infrastructure improvement, and it has also created over 74 million jobs between April 2000 to December 2021, as per the reports. Um, FDI's impact on India's HDI is complex, including improvements in life expectancy, education, and despite lagging behind the China, India has seen a notable increase in its HDI over the time, reflecting the inflow of foreign investments in India. While FDI brings the capital, technology, and employment opportunity, it also presents challenges such as higher external investment dependency, resource exploitation, and environmental degradation, and economic volatility due to uncertain global market conditions. Balancing the benefits and challenges of FDI inflow requires careful consideration and policy measures to maximize benefits while mitigating the associated risks, ensuring the sustainable and inclusive economic development in India. To further discuss these volatilities, we have taken two major um, recent events in consideration as an example. First of them being the COVID-19 pandemic. So, pandemic led to a major reduction in FDI inflow. Factories, schools, offices, tourist spots were shut down. Due to this, the most affected groups were 20 to 45 years, as the jobs, like people were losing their jobs Street vendors and the local stores were shut down. The self-employment, the small businesses, startups were also shut down due to this. And the most affected sector due to the COVID-19 was manufacturing sector in India, which seems to contribute around 12% to the India's GDP. The global FDI inflow decreased by over 49% in the first half of the 2020, and even the most optimistic scenario following the government's economic support policy measures, the numbers did not appear to be improving. The second major event we have taken in consideration is the global financial crisis of 2007 and 8. The collapse of US housing market set off the global financial crisis of 2008, which caused the widespread economic instability, bankruptcies, and recession. Due to the uncertain surrounding the world at the time, investors adopted a cautious approach which had an influence on foreign direct investment flow to India. Nonetheless, the impact was lessened by the India's strong domestic demand and rather solid banking system. Furthermore, over time, more investments inflow were drawn to India as a result of its aggressive policy actions such as liberalization, FDI requirements. The crisis emphasized how interdependent the world's financial markets are and how crucial it is to have a sensible regulatory framework in place to control foreign direct investments. Coming to the next slide, we have summarized the India's growth journey, basically and particularly focusing on the FDI. Um, Due to FDI. So the total FDI received since 1947, the independence year, is around $950 billion, and of which $532 billion has come in the past 90 months, which is approximately more than the 50% of the total FDI inflow since independence. And India's GDP stood at $266 billion in the year 1991, the year of reform introduction. And after that, India has grown around nearly 9 times since that year, and has and the growth rate has been the $2.3 trillion. Today, India is the eighth position among the countries holding the highest foreign exchange reserves. India's foreign exchange reserves reached a record level of $432 billion dollars at the end of year 2017. It just took over 3 years for the forex reserve to swell from around $300 billion to $400 billion in 2017. Even during the pandemic, India received the highest ever FDI of $83.5 billion, which has contributed to 61 sectors in India. And that makes India the very first country to get such huge amount of FDI inflow across the globe, even during the global crisis. And lastly, 91% of the total FDI received came through the open route. That means there were no like included like another measures taken, but these were came from the open route investments. Handing over to my teammate for further discussion in the paper.
Thank you, Julie. Now we are going on to the data analysis part. So we have taken a hypothesis. The null hypothesis we have taken is FDI has no impact on economic indicators, where our alternative hypothesis that we would like to prove is that FDI has an impact on economic variables. So the variables we have taken are FDI net inflows, HDI, unemployment, income index, education index, and health index, gross capital formation, GDP per capita growth, and GDP growth annual rate. So the globalization has significantly increased FDI flows across nation, sparking debates regarding its effect on various economic factors. The study relies on the multi-phase effects of FDI on education, health, income, labor markets, offering valuable insights for both academia and policy formation. Now, while we are moving on to the FDI inflows on Human Development Index, so the equation that is HDI is equal to alpha plus beta FDI plus the error. So this regression that we have done shows that there is a high level of significance with the F statistics being 32.64, with the degree of 29, degree of freedom is being 29, and the p-value being very little, that is 3.501, 507 e raised to 0.6, with a coefficient that states that 0.0603, that indicates that there is every 1 unit increase in the FDI has a 0.060 increase in the Human Development Index. The factors that are sub-factors of HDI, that is income index, education index, and health index, are actually supporting the statement. All the three variables are showing also high significance. Hence, the FDI impact on the HDI had been showing high level of significance. So moving on to the FDI inflows and youth unemployment rate, the equation being youth unemployment rate is equal to alpha plus beta FDI plus error term. The multiple R square being 0.4664, stating that there is 46% of the variation in the unemployment rate has been explained by the FDI. So the p-value here is very little, that shows high level of significance, but the coefficient value is positive, which can be due to the reasons like when FDI inflows are coming in, there may be skill mismatch or difference in the labor market. The skill requirement and the existing skills may be different from each other. So there may be unemployment, and also may be due to inflation. So moving on to the next factor, impact of FDI on gross capital formation. The equation being GCF is equal to alpha plus beta FDI plus the error term. So the multiple R square is 0.4819. It states that 40% of the variations have been explained by the FDI inflows, being F statistics being 26.97 with a degree of 29 freedom, and the p-value being very little, showing high level of significance. So in this, every 1 unit change in the FDI changes 4.408 unit of gross capital formation. Moving on to the impact of FDI inflows on GDP per capita growth. Here, there is a weak relationship between GDP per capita and FDI. So here that it says that there is a very weak FDI impact impacting the GDP per capita. So there's the R statistics is like 0.659, showing that there's only 65%. Not 0.6% is being only explained by the FDI inflows, with the p-value being 0.163. And the impact of FDI inflows on GDP per capita growth states that the variable p-value being highly insignificant, stating this may be due to the reasons that the quality of FDI coming in may not be matching the Indian skill sets, or the absorption of the capital coming in may not be efficient, and there might be the macroeconomic conditions that have caused. So handing over it to Julie.
Thank you, Anushka. So to conclude our paper, from the analysis in the paper, we can see that there is a positive impact of FDI on human development and income and capital formation, which helps in boost the development and growth of the country in overall. And secondly, there has been a improved and positive impact on health and education outcomes, which has wider impact than just the economy, which leads to the social development of the citizens. Coming to the unemployment, surprisingly, FDI might increase the youth unemployment, which leads to the lower employment growth, considering the employment dynamics. And lastly, there's a limited direct impact of FDI on GDP growth rate observed in this analysis. Next, from our research paper, we would like to recommend implementation of policies to improve business climate, attract investors through regulations and incentives given by government as well as the private sector, and investment in healthcare education to maximize social benefits of the FDI, ensure equitable distribution of wealth created by FDI to avoid social issues, and also increase in higher and boost in higher GDP growth rate and more favorable business environment or better human capital can also impact the inflow of FDI, which shows the reverse impact of these variables on the FDI. Uh, so that's for the conclusion. We are open. Thank you so much, and we are open for questions from the panel.
Thank you for your questions, presentation. And this was really good presentation. Now I would like to invite questions from the judges to ensure a constructive dialogue. Also, a small request to the judges, if possible, can we go in the same order like we did in the previous presentation?
Of asking questions?
Yes, I think
Yeah,
that's what Anshuman meant. Yeah,
Okay.
his screen is frozen. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good idea. So even candidates know how to go about it. Very interesting presentation, Anushka and Julie. You looked at several macroeconomic variables, and it's FDI and the impact on several macroeconomic variables. Somehow, I think I have missed the idea of inequality. Okay, that has not been captured in your in the results that you have actually shown. So I think that's one thing. And the other important, I mean, most of your key values, where they are significant, are in the range of 5 point something, which is like, really surprising, because not everything usually comes with these results, but one can't do much with econometrics in that sense. Now, you are saying that FDI may not increase employment, particularly among the youth. Okay. Further, there is another result is FDI and GDP per capita are not significantly related. Okay. Then why do we need FDI? That's a question to say that it will come in education, healthcare. If I have no employment, there can be no employment generation. Okay, there can be no income generation for individuals. What am I going to do with FDI coming in education and hospitals and healthcare? I have no money to pay. So, what does it actually tell us? So, just think about it, and you can maybe take all questions together and answer it. Maybe you'll have a consolidated answer, whichever is convenient with you.
Okay. We would like to answer your last question first, if that's fine. So we have seen that there has been a lot of like global shutdown and global crisis coming up in the past years. In the recent, like in 2023, there has been a conflict of Israel and Gaza war. There has been a conflict of Russia and Ukraine war. So if you see before these conflicts, like after the post-reform periods, 1991, FDI has significantly contributed in such sectors, but after these conflicts, they come, and also due to the they decrease the employment impact on the employment because of the inflation. That's a factor that comes in the consideration. Also, inflation in the country and global inflation. Due to that, FDI, like it doesn't really impact the employment in the country, and there has been layoffs of job due to these crises because of the increasing inflation. But when the economy is significantly stable, we can say that FDI creates more job opportunities. If we see India as a developing country, it requires to increase its manufacturing sector and put more investments in its manufacturing sector if it has to, like increase and reach the $4 trillion goal of it. And I think for that, FDI has to be one of the major contributor. And also we have opened our current account, made it like standardized and convertible. Also, we have not fully made our capital account convertible. We have partially made it, so that could be one of the point for that. I hope that clears. I hope that answers your question.
Other questions, because I think this will be a long, winded conversation otherwise.
Yes. Okay.
I don't have much in way of question, but I think, yeah, that's a pretty interesting presentation. Like, I guess I just want to know about maybe your thoughts on the choice of your econometric model. Like, what did you use? Was it maybe a particular time series model? And I guess the second part of that question is whether there is a way in which, so right now your model just includes a whole bunch of dependent variables and on FDI. So I wonder if you thought about including other variables that could also explain um, the outcome, that the dependent variables that you're looking at, like education or income or the SDI and things like that. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on.
The model like we have chosen is a simple linear model because the time series we have taken is only for the span of 30 years, and it's just the yearly. So we can't take a time series. We can't take a time series data sets for that. And we have tried for adding in multiple variables, but the model was not going according to what we wished it should actually go. So we actually cut down like a little bit so that it comes to the viewpoint or the aim we are going for.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Quick note, thank you for the presentation first. I think this is sort of building off of Dr. Swati and Dr. Anirudh's points as well. See, it's always desirable to add covariates that literature shows or that in your assessment can potentially impact the dependent variable. Because since it's a simple linear regression, there is reason to believe that we are definitely missing on some covariates that should have been included in the model. And of course, there are times we include some covariates and we realize that we expected this result, but this is not what we get. But that's part of research. So that's how you understand that, okay, maybe this result should have been this way. This is the intuition, or this is what I gauge from the existing literature. But it's quite possible that you might get something completely different, a counterintuitive result, which still is a result. So I think rather than a question, my suggestion would be to go back to the results you already had, including the other covariates that you identified through the literature, and just reassess those results, because you have 30 data points from what I understand, 30 years, 30 data points. I think there is quite a bit that can still be done looking at the results. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anushka. So Anushka and Juhi for your presentation. Now, the next presenters are Shaina Bedi and Ramona Sharma from Jai Hind College, and their paper title is "What impact do geopolitical conflicts have on the world economy, and how do these conflicts resonate globally?" Over to you, Shaina and Ramona.
Yes, good morning, judges, and good morning, participants. We'll just share our screen in a minute. Is it visible?
Yep.
If I asked you to name the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word war, most people would instinctively think of military or weapons. But in today's world, one does not need an army to make waves across the world. A very good morning to our esteemed panel of judges and fellow participants. Today, I, Shaina Bedi,
And I, Ramona Sharma,
are going to present our research paper on the topic Implications of Geopolitical Conflicts and Their Impact on the Global Economy.
So, from World War II to the Cold War between the two superpowers, history has shown us the significant impact of economic warfare on the global stage. Amidst a war when nations fight for the display of power, the economics of war emerges as a stark reality. To delve into the intricacies of these geopolitical and geoeconomic issues, we study how localized disputes can trigger economic effects worldwide, which is also called the geoeconomic ripple effect. This paper aims to investigate the multifaceted impacts of geopolitical conflicts on the functioning of global economy and markets. It aims to find how international relations can play a significant role in determining the nature of the consequences faced by different countries in such situations.
Literature review. Through the analysis of existing studies, some of our key findings include the emergence of geoeconomics, where trade expansion has overtaken territorial expansion. While geopolitics is about a state's power, dominance, and relations, depending on its geographical location in the world, it has been studied that it is economic competition that underlies these politics. The UN itself uses economic sanctions to solve political problems. Further, we found a supportive base for our case studies, where we've seen that there have been worldwide economic repercussions because of conflicts such as the Russia-Ukraine war, the disruption of trade because of the Red Sea crisis. And these prove that the geoeconomic ripple effect is actually very real and it is happening right now.
Talking about the methodology, our paper follows Creswell's methodology, which involves the use of secondary data, where we've analyzed some significant and important key performance indicators like gross domestic product, inflation rate, currency exchange rate, supply chain disruptions due to the foreign investments, etc., to identify the economic trends and relationships. It also involves the analysis of major case studies and literature reviews like the Russia-Ukraine war, the Houthi Red Sea attacks, the Rohingya crisis, and the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
Okay, the results. So we'll first start with the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, the real GDP growth is one of the most significant macroeconomic indicators. And taking the nations directly involved, we find that Ukraine's GDP fell by more than 30% within the first year of the war, while Russia was heavily sanctioned, and this led to a 5% cut in its overall economic growth for the next 2 years. Exports. Russia and Ukraine largely contribute to the worldwide production and trade of basic commodities, that is food and energy. Pre-invasion, Ukraine's grain exports made up about 10% of the global markets, whereas within 2 months of the war, they fell by 90%, causing acute food shortages all over the world. According to the IMF, the prices of food, energy, metals, which are basic commodities, shot up. And because of Russia's cut in oil exports, we saw that energy prices soared worldwide up to what has not been seen in 3 decades.
Apart from the effect on energy prices, another important aspect is the impact on oil flow on countries which were not directly involved in the conflict. So the graph on the left shows that gas flow from Russia to the European Union was cut nearly by 80% between May and October 2022. This effect, however, stands in sharp contrast to India's oil exports, which surged by 384%, making India Russia's 4th largest import partner. Along with this, India also refined and exported oil to the European Union, which had banned Russian oil, thus leading to its profits. Focusing further on the geoeconomic ripple effect, the drastic negative impact that was seen on African countries due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict prove how localized disputes can trigger widespread economic and humanitarian repercussions worldwide. The Russian invasion triggered a shortage of about 30 million tons of grains in Africa. Commodities like wheat, vegetable oil, barley, etc. were the most basic and staple food grains, which showed a monthly price increase of 12.6% in 2022. Along with this, almost 23 African countries also faced bankruptcy due to surging food prices and lower availability of goods.
So let us understand what are the implications of these results. While the warring nations do experience direct repercussions, such as a decline in GDP growth, inflation, high consumer prices, its contrasting ripple effect in other countries shows the importance of international relations and politics in determining the economic consequences. While Europe faced import cuts, and Africa grappled with debt and food scarcity, India, in light of its favorable relations with Russia and its ongoing emphasis on strategic autonomy, has actually benefited by increasing its oil imports at discounted rates, by refining it and reselling it to Europe, thereby profiting. Now we come to the Houthi case study, the Red Sea shipping crisis. Maritime shipping is essential in international commerce. And one of the largest crises faced currently in global trade is the instability caused by Houthi attacks in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. The Suez Canal is a prominent trade route, and it requires the mandatory transit through the Red Sea, as you can see in the blue line. This is essential for the shippings from the east to the west. However, because of these attacks, this route has been largely abandoned. And at the same time, the Cape of Good Hope, which is the longer route in orange, has now doubled in its daily transit volume, it is a large increase from about 5 million metric tons of oil trade volume per day. Because of this rerouting and delay and increased container cost, increased insurance costs, companies have gone into losses and countries are facing the brunt of this. China, for example, is now paying about $4,000 to $5,000 extra for every 40-foot container that they ship. India has experienced about 9% loss in non-oil exports in a single month, and Egypt has experienced 40% losses in their Suez Canal revenues, on which their economy is heavily dependent. And this has added to their already existing foreign exchange shortage and public debt burden.
The Houthi attacks on the vital Red Sea shipping lanes hence demonstrate that geoeconomics and geography also act as major economic drivers. While the threats to the Suez Canal routes jeopardized Egypt's economy, economies such as India and China suffered substantial losses as well from the disrupted trade lanes, which led to a surge in costs and shipping delays. So this highlights the economic significance of geographical factors as well. Now, since we talked about the economic impact, we would now like to expand on a very different aspect, that is the humanitarian conflict in Bangladesh. Highlighting the significance of multilateral aid and intervention, Bangladesh is currently facing one of its biggest humanitarian crises in decades, with over 1 million Rohingya refugees residing in their territory since 2017. The Bangladesh Joint Response Plan created a budget. However, it could only meet 34% of the funding required to support the Rohingyas. However, with the assistance of international aid from organizations like World Bank, Bangladesh has received immense funding to deal with the crisis, as shown in the figures mentioned here. This shows the impact and power of humanitarian aid in shaping the economical impacts of geopolitical crises and conflicts. The role of international aid and assistance from donor countries and multilateral institutions like the UN and the World Bank has proven to be very crucial in situations of humanitarian crisis. A similar effect can also be seen in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which acts as proof of how sometimes humanitarian aid can be hindered due to the prioritization of national interests. So, to facilitate the movement of grain exports, the Black Sea Initiative was an agreement between the United Nations, Russia, and Turkey to allow exports via a safe maritime humanitarian corridor in the Black Sea, which worked quite successfully for a year until Russia backed out from the deal due to its unmet demands by the West. Russia further claimed to negotiate with the countries in need of the exports individually and further demanded a reintegration into the SWIFT payment system. Hence, we come to know that even aid does not come without its own challenges, as explained through the Black Sea Grain Initiative. When countries place national interests above collective humanitarian needs, it acts as an obstacle in the role of assistance. Thus, we need to be able to formulate a unified global response towards such conflicts and crises.
In conclusion, the above explained geopolitical conflicts highlight how politics dominate world economics. Battles are no longer just fought on battlefields, but also to the realm of economic markets, currencies, and trade networks. As
Clausewitz once said, "War is a mere continuation of policy by other means." So these are some of our references. And thank you. We're open to questions now.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Shaina and Ramona. Judges, over to you. You can ask your questions.
Very interesting presentation, substantially wide coverage on different kinds of geopolitical events that have taken place in the recent past. So I'm going to ask you to answer the question, because the last thing on the last letter is economics, the new warfare, you know. So I think your answer would be an unequivocal yes, right? Because that's what we are seeing through the various presentations that you have made. But I'm going to put you a value judgment question. Okay, the question here I'm asking is that why not? If nations enter in war, is it wrong on part of nations to protect their own interests? So they can. So, like, I'm just asking you. So that is the question that I'm putting. So if Russia got out of the Black Sea initiative because it was losing the war, then why not? So it's a value judgment. So maybe you can think about it and then come back. You know, because always paternalistic behavior may not hold. You may not work with community welfare. So maybe you can take other questions and come back to this last.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Sure. Thanks, Ramona and Shaina, for super interesting presentation. I think that, yeah, it's a good summary of, all the different indicators that we can potentially track when we think about, a geopolitical conflict or war, in this case. So I guess one question that I had is, maybe, is there something that during your research that you came across which was like very unexpected? Like maybe this was an impact that was not something that you thought would sort of come up as a result of your analysis. And maybe I just wanted to hear a little bit more on that. You can also take Tracy's question and then answer it. Yeah, that's
fine. Thank you for your question. So one thing that was really strikingly different was the impact on both Russia and Ukraine's economies. Ukraine suffered extreme losses, like 30% of their GDP fell. Whereas for Russia, it was 5% of their GDP, which was cut, but it wasn't really that impactful. Even the sanctions did not really impact Russia that way. They managed to they managed to cope with it very easily. And if you see the Russia-Ukraine war, after it was done, everything came back to normal within a few months. So one could say that, these aren't really impacts, but at the same time, it's like we do see impacts. There were shortages in Africa. So it's a bit contrasting because the country involved directly is not that affected by itself. But then this does further prove our research, because it shows that maybe those countries directly aren't affected, but other countries definitely are. So I hope that answers your question.
Sure, thanks.
Hi, Shaina, Ramona. Interesting presentation. So I think this can sort of help you answer Dr. Swati's question also, or maybe put the two things together. So my question is very clarificatory in a sense that could you explain your research question, or just mention your research question in a couple of sentences? The exact analysis you did in a couple of sentences, and your takeaways from the paper. Because see, you've taken multiple instances of conflicts, you've sort of compared them. So I wanted to gauge an idea of what were your basic takeaways, like question, analysis, takeaway. Just a couple of sentences each, yeah.
So ma'am, our basic aim with our study in the paper was to analyze major macroeconomic indicators that can show us an impact of the conflict and crisis in the world. So we took indicators, like I mentioned, like GDP, inflation rate, which are some major indicators that give us a clear and simple answer as to how the impact of the war was. Further, we also tried to include the impact of humanitarian crisis, which was something different, because we took two sides of the coin, wherein we stated how humanitarian aids can support countries, but as well as can be hindered due to prioritization of national interests. So yeah, these were one of our main aims.
I just like to add that we also try to show that the consequences of war are not always negative, whereas like we showed that India actually profited. So to a large extent, it's not just economics, but it's actually geopolitics that tells you which country is going to be affected in what way. So I guess that is what we show.
I just have one comment to make, if I may, Srashti. Can I?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
see, you made the statement that India profited. India profited because you're talking of geopolitics. India profited because the West permitted India to export that oil. I think you're too young to look at it. West was not going to accept that oil. They circumvented their own sanctions. Okay, and this was a way of circumvention. So the West was really truly not wanting that oil. Then technically this economic profit would not have been enjoyed. So it's just a view, but you must look at it in perspective. So because you're talking of geopolitics and geoeconomics, so that's the point that one must keep at the back of your mind.
Yes, ma'am. But another
I don't
thing.
expect a response. I'm just saying, making a statement. But when you study it in its entirety. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely. Thank you. Ma'am,
So,
sorry, I thought should we come back to your first question?
Yeah, sure. If you have an answer, please do.
Okay, so in this case, Russia was trying to move away from that Western influence, and they wanted to show that they don't need the West in order to, facilitate for them. So in a way, they actually, the recent update is that Russia stopped the grain deal, but they have been negotiating on their own with African countries and been providing free grains to them. So in a way, even though they did prioritize national interest, they are still working towards the humanitarian aspect on their own without the United Nations and without the West. But in some cases, it's not always, like in this case, it was positive. But if you look at for example, the Israel-Gaza war, right now, because of national interests, you can say that it's so difficult to even pass a single resolution. And in this case, it's the dire need is to actually come up with a solution for that war. But because of the political instability, because of different views, it's actually really difficult to do that. So I would say it's not always positive to prioritize national interests, but of course, in this case, it was.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good. Do we have any more questions?
do we have any more questions? I don't think so, because also the time is also almost up. So, thank you, Shaina, and thank you, Ramona, for your presentation. Now, moving on to the next
Thank you.
presenter, we have Manya Lamba and Akanksha Sharma from Kamala Nehru College, and their paper title is Navigating Geopolitical Uncertainty, a comparative analysis of mitigation strategies. Manya and Akanksha, all the best, and over to you.
Ramona and Shaina, I think you'll have to stop sharing your screen.
Yes, ma'am. Did it stop?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Ma'am, I think so. Manya is not in the meeting, and neither is
Uh,
Akanksha.
Okay, okay. Maybe
So
both
shall
of
we
them are
move
present.
on? They are not in
Akan.
the meeting.
Oh, both of them are not there. Yeah, I think then
No.
we can move on to the next team.
Then we can move on to the next. Okay. So the next presenters are Aditi Walia and Tanishka Mathur from Kamala Nehru College, and their paper title is What impact do geopolitical conflicts have on the world economy, and how do these conflicts resonate globally? Aditya and Tanishka, all the best, and over to you.
Hello everyone. I hope my audio and video is audible. Can you see me?
Yes, you are perfectly audible, and we can hear you, and we can see
I
you.
will now share
All
my
the best.
screen. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. You can carry on.
Okay. Think of a global conflict as a massive domino game with interconnected pieces. When trade wars arise, supply chains that bring us items are disturbed. Prices rise, and businesses everywhere feel the pressure. The stock market becomes a roller coaster as investors become worried and begin to move their money around, affecting currencies and equities all around the world. Security is also an issue. Threats such as terrorism and cyber attacks do not respect boundaries. Good morning, everyone. I, Aditi Vela, and my colleague Tanishka Mathur from Kamla Nehru College, Delhi University, present before you our research report, which seeks to answer the question, what impact do geopolitical conflicts have on the world economy, and how do these conflicts resonate globally? We are going to tackle the first half of this question in the beginning of our presentation and try to answer the second half as we near the conclusion. The methodology that we have used here is based majorly on data from secondary sources like daily newspapers, articles, and reports. The organized presentation of all the gathered data supports the formation of meaningful conclusions. Tanishka, please unmute yourself.
So, hello everyone. Taking this discussion further, we should understand what geopolitical conflicts actually are. So, these can be referred to as strained relations that arise due to conflicting interests, territorial disputes, ideological differences, and resource competition. These geopolitical conflicts not just affect the participating countries, but potentially the entire world. So, allow me to introduce you to the subject of a research study, which is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Global conflicts, wars, and revolutions are closely linked to the geographic significance of individual countries. The majority of Russia's plan to invade Ukraine stemmed from the geography of the nation. Putin made a similar statement in 2015 when he referred to Ukraine as the crown jewel of Russia. Also, the eastern Ukrainian regions have people who are pro-Russians, and their culture is also similar to Russia's. So US played a very important and major role in resolving these several issues between the independent Ukraine and Russia following the end of the Cold War, including the division of Black Sea Naval Fleet, various debts, and nuclear weapons. NATO and Ukraine eventually became partners as a result of the US strong interest in Ukraine. One of Russia's main reasons for starting the war was to oppose Ukraine's attempt to ally with the West, especially its ambitions to join NATO. So tensions have been raised in the Ukrainian financial markets because of this. Numerous European nations rely on Russian gas supplies, and as of the conflict intensifies, both the cost of gas and the associated expenses will rise, therefore having an impact on the financial markets in Europe, causing international investors to exit from the market and ultimately having an impact on the global economy. So this spillover effect can be seen in India as well, which we'll discuss ahead.
Now we shall move on to the impacts of these conflicts. Just a second. Okay. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has caused suffering and a disaster for humanity. In order to have a deeper understanding of this, let us first discuss some of the worldwide effects of this war. The first in line is disruption of trade and supply chains. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is having a significant influence on the global supply chain, restricting the movement of commodities, fueling extreme cost hikes and product shortages, and causing severe shortages of food worldwide. It can be observed that disruption to supply chains will majorly come from three sources, which have been listed here in our presentation as well. So firstly, transit through Russia is becoming more and more difficult due to the conflict, which is in effect impacting land-based trade routes between Asia and Europe. Some Chinese companies had increased their traffic over these land-based routes through Russia as an alternative to sea and air freight during the COVID-19 pandemic, but due to compliance, reputational concerns, and safety issues, these routes are being affected. Second in line is air ties between Russia and Europe, as well as in turn Asia and Europe will be severely hampered following the EU's decision to close their airspace to Russian aircraft and cargo. About 35% of global freight was being transported by air prior to the pandemic, about half of which was carried on passenger planes. Last but not the least, Ukraine has shut down commercial shipping, and Turkey's decision of restricting Bosphorus transit will thereby halt sea freight routes in the Black Sea for weeks. This will have an impact on the grain shipments from Ukraine, Russia, and potentially Bulgaria and Romania.
So moving on to our next point, which is changes in investment patterns. So in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, numerous global firms, including major brands like Nike, Coca-Cola, IKEA, and Apple, have either left Russia or announced plans to reduce their presence there. As we can see in this image, there are so many countries that are planning to do so, which includes US, UK, Nordic countries, and even India. As of 22nd March 2024, amid US sanctions, all Indian refineries, including Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, and Hindustan Petroleum, they are rejecting Russian crude. After the war, the difference in the price between similar supplies shot up to $30 a barrel, but it has since narrowed and is now just $2 to $4 for Indian buyers. This month, India is still anticipated to import significant amounts of Russian crude. However, the overall impact on the global foreign direct investment flows is expected to be limited. Russia's role as a recipient and originator of FDI is marginal, comprising only 1 to 1.5% of the global FDI stocks. However, FDI inflows to Russia may decline immediately, with a sizable portion of foreign investment coming from investors in few OECD nations.
Now moving on, another significant impact of the Russia-Ukraine war has been felt on financial market volatility. Now, to understand this more, I would like to first define what volatility means. So volatility is an investment term that describes when a market or security experiences periods of unpredictable and sometimes sharp price movements, which is one of the consequences of this war. Market volatility in stocks has lately decreased to levels comparable to pre-war norms and is expected to remain consistent until the end of 2022. Market volatility in interest rates remains high, raising worries about the advanced nation's ability to normalize this policy. The graph here depicts commodity and energy price dynamics during the conflict, which initially resulted in a significant increase in the prices of oil and natural gas, and also driving up the price of coal, as well as metals and grains against a backdrop of expected delivery or even production disruptions. Since the Russian Federation and Ukraine are key global suppliers of agricultural goods, including corn, maize, fertilizers, and sunflower oil, supplying around 16% of the world's cereals, prices of these goods spiked since the outbreak of the war. Difficulties over payment schemes and explosions at the Nord Stream 1 pipeline in September 2022 resulted in reduced flow of Russian natural gas to Europe. As per a report that was published by the United Nations dated 1st of March 2023, the EU moved to reduce its dependence on imports of Russian gas, sharply increasing purchases of LNG from Algeria, Azerbaijan, Norway, and the UK, and increasing electricity generation from coal, solar, and wind sources. The prices of metals also can be seen in this graph given here. that is, such as aluminum, cobalt, nickel, palladium, and titanium have also spiked, hurting automotive and electronics production. As Russian producers of industrial metals largely remained outside official sanctions, prices eventually subsided, and prices may increase again over the coming year due to any supply chain pressures or due to market volatility.
The next significant impact is on the currency exchange rate. So whenever there is a war, investors tend to prefer safe assets such as US dollar. So because of the war, more people want the US dollar, which makes it even stronger as compared to other currencies. However, in the long run, dollar's strong position might weaken because Russia and maybe other countries are starting to rely less on dollar. This could reduce the dollar's influence globally. So in short, dollar is strong now, but it might not stay that for long. So the next is Russia's ruble. The Russian currency, the ruble has lost more than 64% to the dollar compared from the previous year because of the sanctions imposed by the Western countries due to the war. These sanctions are meant to isolate Russia from rest of the world. Other currencies from the countries that are part of the Soviet Union, like Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, have also lost 8 to 12% against dollar. Also, India's currency has also devalued. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, India's currency has become weaker. It has lost almost 10% of its value compared to dollar. This weakening of rupee has been happening for a while, even before the war, but it has become even worse because of the war. There is a problem for policymakers because it means India buys from other countries and which are priced in dollars, and they are becoming more expensive.
Last but not the least, increase in economic uncertainty, which is one of the most important impacts of the Ukrainian crisis. A wide range of adverse global economic trends that were already present before the conflict, such as growing food insecurity, rising inflation, extreme poverty, and worsening environmental degradation, have all been significantly accelerated by this war. To begin by stating the obvious, war-torn Ukraine is in a state of severe economic distress. In addition to the destruction of physical capital, millions have fled the country, and countless thousands have been killed or moved. This comes on top of a generalized rise in economic distress around the world as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Central banks are vigorously fighting inflation. Soaring food and energy prices and renewed supply shocks caused by the war in Ukraine have driven a surge in inflation and pushed up short and medium-term inflation expectations. In 2022, central banks worldwide raised interest rates in quick succession to bring inflation under control and anchor inflation expectations. The Federal Reserve led global monetary tightening, lifting its key policy rate 6 times from 0 to 0.25% in March to 4.25 to 4.5% in December 2022. This was the largest cumulative rate increase in any given year since 1980. The second in line we have is mounting debt and balance of payment vulnerabilities. Domestic currencies have depreciated against the dollar due to sharp and quick rises in interest rates and rising geopolitical tensions. Depreciating domestic currencies increased import costs and inflationary pressures in several developing countries, also like India. Rapidly tightening global financial conditions have exacerbated balance of payment and debt vulnerabilities in many developing countries, and higher debt servicing burdens are constraining much needed expenditures to support economic recovery, protect the most vulnerable population groups during the cost of living crisis, and finance sustainable development.
Moving towards answering the second half question of our topic, we'll probe into how this conflict has impacted various countries and regions. So the European countries will be impacted directly as Russia supplies energy in the form of natural gas to them. Those Eastern European countries that are most exposed to trade with Russia, for example, Lithuania and Latvia, will also take a hit from the conflict. Elsewhere in Europe, the European Union will suffer from an energy supply chain and trade shock.
The three countries of Europe, which are Germany, Croatia, and France, they are staying out of this issue as they are aware of the fact that this war can lead to an economic downturn in Europe. India has its own economic priorities and has been impartial due to its diplomatic relationships with both countries. Even though US has put sanctions, India is still buying crude oil from Russia at very low price. Also, Russia has been a major exporter of sunflower oil to India. According to Russian Ministry of Agriculture, in the late 2023, Russia emerged as top supplier of sunflower oil, with India becoming the leading buyer of Russian sunflower oil, doubling its purchases. China and Russia have good ties, and China is doing its best to avoid war and is following a peace plan. However, there has been an economic impact on China as well due to this war, as it has hit the manufacturing sector and the financial market of China. So the effects of Russia's war on Ukraine have shaken not only those countries, but also the entire region and the world. This shows why it's important to have global and regional plans.
Your
protect the
15
world
minutes are
economies.
over, guys.
Yeah. So with this, I would end my presentation, and we are open to questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Aditi and Tanishka. Judges, over to you. You can ask your questions.
Another very interesting presentation on geopolitics, which covered aspects, not covered by the other two. So there was thankfully no overlap. But your presentation would have just a few points of, suggestions. I don't have questions largely. This is to say that if you have said, quantification of investment loss. So you said that Nike and Coca-Cola are going to withdraw out of Russia. So, what would have been the amount of investment loss that would have been in Russia, in terms that on job loss, if there were any figures that were there in literature. You also made a point on migration in Ukraine, where people because of the conflict, migrated out of Ukraine. And there are enough numbers that are going around. Okay. So it would have probably added the richness of your presentation if you had done that. Now you said OECD and you have made some, but the OECD is one publication which comes up with lots of figures and quantification. So I think adding those things would have, enriched your presentation much more. That's all that I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll keep that in mind.
Thanks. I think that's a useful presentation. I think, like ma'am said, it's a useful summary of things that maybe we didn't hear about before. I guess my overall, I guess my question is that maybe if you had, say, all the data in the world, and like you could basically monitor this in sort of as granular way or as sort of careful way as you can. Like how would you go about answering this question? Like right now, we just have to use secondary data. Right now, we just have to, look at these reports, other statistics, etc. So, if you wanted to sort of perfectly answer this question, and I think I also need clarity on the question that you sought to answer, how would you go about doing it?
It's about answering our research question, that is, what impact these geopolitical conflicts have. So, sir, overall, that we tried to answer this question using this case study of Russia and Ukraine war that is still going on. So, with this case study only, we try to answer this question, like that, what impact do these conflicts? Like, if we talk about specifically India, so we can see that geopolitical conflict is happening in another part of the world. Russia and Ukraine are fighting, but due to the ties that we have with Russia, with Ukraine, the relations that India has, so it will definitely have an impact on India, and not just in India. It will have an impact on EU as well, on US as well. US is also facing the impact of this, and since US is not shipping crude oil from Russia, and it is also putting this telling India to not do the same with Russia, but since India has close ties with Russia, so we are still continuing because we have economic priorities than US. So I would say that geopolitical conflicts will have an impact on, that is why it is geopolitical, geographical as well as political. It will definitely have an impact on other countries as well. And how do these conflicts resonate globally? That is, how do other countries, what role does this particular conflict between two countries play with the others all around the globe? That is that we have covered all over our presentation, that why everything is happening, why we are also facing this conflict between the two countries are fighting up amongst each other, but we are also facing these disruptions, these supply disruptions, inflation, everything, stock markets are falling, everything is happening in India as well. I hope that answers.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think in some way, but my suggestion is also to maybe think about, if like maybe what we would learn about all global conflicts around the world, like if there was a way to maybe think about them from a more general sort of framework, from sort of economic modeling framework or something like this. So that's my suggestion for you guys, like sort of going forward. So, but yeah, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Tanishka and Aditi. Thank you for your presentation. Quick question. So, see, you mentioned towards the end of the presentation, you mentioned that there are a few European countries that have chosen to stay out of the conflict in some manner. But I wanted to know in your literature review or in your assessment of the reports, studies, articles that are out there, do you think that there are ripple effects in the financial markets of these countries, even though they have chosen to stay out of the conflict directly? But as you mentioned that there are effects on financial markets. So do you think that there are some cascading ripple effects that are felt even by these countries?
Ma'am, as I covered financial market volatility, in that I covered that financial markets all over the world, they will be facing this, since the countries that the EU countries that have invested in Russia, they will face this because Russia is involved in a war with Ukraine. So they will definitely be facing this. Also, to point out one thing, that US has frozen all the investment that Russia has done there. So Russia is not able to use that. And similarly, with Russia having a war with Ukraine, so the financial markets elsewhere as well, in other countries as well, they will also be facing this because stock markets will go down. So investors will be facing huge losses. So I think that will also happen, even though they are trying to stay away from this war, but impact will be there on other countries as well.
Thank you.
Aditi and Tanishka, thank you for your presentation. Now, moving on to our next presenters, we have Ars Taneja and Rachel Batra from St. Stephen's College, and their paper title is Oaxaca's Double-Edged Sword, Gender-Based Discrimination in India. Ars and Rachel, over to you. All the best.
Thank you so much. Just give us 2 minutes to be beginning. Very good morning, everyone. I'm Chitra, and with me, teammate Ars Taneja. We're here to present our research that's titled Osaka's Double-Edged Sword, Gender Wage Discrimination in India. We would start by just introducing a topic and research question. The gender wage gap is a persistent concern in labor economics, and it continues to drive scholarly inquiry worldwide. While extensive research has explored its root, this study focuses on its manifestation in developing nations, particularly in the Indian context. Despite a lot of strides in gender equality, wage disparities still persist. So in our
I'm not able to see or hear them. Is it true for
I
all?
believe,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
I
they
believe,
have dropped the
ma'am,
call.
they joined again. They
Okay.
joined again. I think they
Okay.
are facing some technical issues.
I'm sorry, I think there's some network issues on our end. We're just reconnecting. We'll just 2 minutes.
Sure.
No.
Hi, are you audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, you're audible.
All right. I'm so sorry for that. We're actually out in the college and the network here is always a bit spotty. I'll just keep my video shut for now for the network issue, but we'll move on.
So in our research, we're employing the IHDS 2011, and we aim to identify factors contributing to the gender wage gap in India. We employ the
Sorry, you haven't shared your screen. We can't see the presentation.
I think they dropped off.
Maybe we can tell them to join last, so that by then they'll be more stable connection because they said
Right.
they're outside. So,
Right. Omkar, can we request, can you please request us and Rachel to present last because we have Shaunak and Rohan. Yeah. So
I will call
meanwhile,
them and let them know.
absolutely. So I think we can start with Rohan and Shaunak, and after that we'll go back to us and Rachel.
All right. Thank you so much,
Okay,
ma'am.
ma'am.
You just get better network and be back. Thank you.
Sure. No worries.
Okay, so due to some technical issues, ours and Rachel will present later on. So we have to move on to the next ones. The next presenters are Shauna Kulkarni and Rohan Dubey from University of London and Podar World College respectively. And the title of their paper is The Climate Cost of Climate Investment, a two-period perspective. All the best. Go ahead, Shaunak and Rohan.
Hi, can you see the screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, good morning to the panelists, the audience, and our peers. I'm Shauna Kulkarni, and I'm joined today by Rohan Dubey. I'm a first-year student of Economics and Finance. Rohan's a second-year student, and we'll be presenting the climate cost of climate investment through a two-period perspective. A major barrier to international cooperation in the realm of international climate action is an apparent lack of fair and just allocation of responsibility between stakeholder groups. Understanding, isolating, and instituting mechanisms to manage incentives against sharing responsibility can go a long way in sustaining effective long-term cooperation. The main aim of our study is to establish whether climate investment demonstrates diminishing marginal return in terms of carbon productivity and to evaluate the implications of that for climate policy. In the interest of brevity and accuracy, given our exclusive use of secondary data, we will be limited to exploring a binary relationship between the magnitude of climate investment and the expected or observed return on each additional unit of investment. In essence, we are covering three research themes. One, assessing the relationship between the cumulative impact of domestic climate investment and the state of economic development. Then we explore links between accumulated impact of climate investment and the effectiveness of additional investment. And finally, we discuss policy implications surrounding the climate impact of additional investment in terms of domestic state of economic development. So Rohan will walk you through our key factors and methodology and how we've modeled the carbon productivity in terms of HDI and state capacity.
Thanks, Shanak. So, as Shanak touched upon, we're trying to establish a relationship between climate investment and its impact. So, to quantify its impact, we've chosen carbon productivity as a variable, which is the amount of GDP produced per unit of CO2 equivalents emitted. And our independent variable would be Human Development Index. Now, what constitutes as climate investment has been a center of strong debate in academia, and it requires the intersection of physics, economics and finance, and climate science to understand what truly constitutes climate investment. Thus, we use a proxy, which is Human Development Index. Further, in our model, we have also included state capacity, which is the ability of a state to effectively administer and impose its policies. We've included this because we know HDI and state capacity are very highly correlated. So we wanted to control for any omitted variable bias in our model. And we wanted to study the ceteris paribus effects of human development on carbon productivity. Next slide. So when we started out our research, obviously the thing we are most keen on understanding, as Shaunak pointed, was what's the relationship between productivity and human development? Is it a linear relationship, exponential, decaying exponential, growing exponential, or uncorrelated? Because all three of these have very different policy implications for our policymakers. So we first need to understand this relationship before proposing solutions to climate change. Moving ahead. So before we go to our formal linear regression model, we just want to introduce you to our data set. We have extensively cleaned for data owing to discrepancies in SC or even carbon productivity for developing countries. And we have found the data from 1990 to 2014, where we see a roughly exponential relationship, which we will explore in more detail ahead in a more formal environment using linear regression tools. However, this is just to introduce you to the basic relationship between these two variables. Can you go ahead? While we were doing our research, we realized that instead of aggregating all countries together, our linear regression model would give us a better understanding of the true relationship if we split countries into developing and developed. Consequently, as you can see over here, we have made two regression models, which I will get to soon. The first being for the developed countries, which are the G7 countries in our data set. Right, now we have our linear regression model. Before I go on to explain the implications of the regression model on development and climate investment, I'd just like to point out that on the right-hand side, you can find the OLS estimates of HDI, control, which, just to remind, is state capacity. All of these have been tested using the standard T statistics with the significance level indicated by the asterisks. And we have our R-square and the F statistic. Now, as we can notice over here in G7 countries, clearly there isn't a very strong relationship between human development and carbon productivity. I'd like you to keep this in mind as we proceed to our next slide. Here we have our data for developing countries. Again, before I move on to a more formal regression model, this is just to show to the audience what the data spread looks like. Clearly over here, we can already see more of a linear relationship. Again, as we go to the regression model now, I'll be able to explain what this means for our research. Once again, on the right-hand side, we have all the relevant regression statistics. Now, as you notice over here, we clearly have a better fit for our model, where human development, which again, to remind you, is a proxy for climate investment in our model, is serving to clearly show a positive linear relationship with carbon productivity, which we would expect. The intuition behind this is that clearly there are more marginal returns to be sought by investing in carbon productivity in developing countries, a sort of a parallel to the Solo model. Before I proceed to these parallels and the theory that we can infer from our regression, I'd also like to point out that our regression seems to satisfy contemporaneous exogeneity, which could rule out autocorrelation and clearly shows a better fit. So we have now understood the difference in the relationship in productivity and development in both developing and developed countries. Again, but as we have discussed, there are quite a lot of pitfalls for regression, even when we have controls and controls for exogeneity. So that's why I would now request Shaunak to take up the theoretical part that explains and supports the regression results that we have encountered.
Thanks, Rohan. So as we just explored, we can roughly aggregate this to two periods of investment. One, where we have developing countries, and again, it's not an exhaustive data set, but it serves the purpose of representing developing countries here, and developed countries. And the two periods essentially are analogous to Solo's capital deepening equilibrium and capital widening equilibrium. What we have here basically implies that developed economies operate at a different equilibrium than that of developing countries. And this dichotomy can be developed by using features of the steady state, again, going back to Solo's model of economic growth, where per capita development and per capita output are tied to each other. Now, over here, rather than tying per capita development and per capita output, we are tying carbon productivity and per capita capital investment. So essentially, a developing country as such can transition to a developed phase, and a developed phase country with sufficient cutting edge development and transition back to a developing phase where it has more opportunity to develop than your erstwhile period one countries. So for the sake of this study, we'll refer to the developing period as period one and developed period as period two. Now, there are certain geopolitical and policy implications of such a model, which is actually supported by empirical data and anecdotal evidence from what we see happening in developing countries, where financial support for mitigation actions undertaken by developing countries has mainly been project-based, as found by Newhoff et al. 2009. So using this Solo analogy, any and all climate investment in developing countries will have real and immediate grassroots impact. Okay, I think this slide is stuck. Yeah. Okay. And this real impact will in turn encourage spontaneity, which will mean that climate investment comes as it does. You don't really need to be strategic about where you invest, how you invest, or even why you invest, because you're going to get returns no matter what you do. And taking this forward, policymakers in developed economies may raise objection to the apparent cost of deliberate climate action. And the developing world will actually be plagued by more of a lack of political will, because no matter what you do, you're getting return. This can also snowball into a free rider problem, where a critical mass of economies approaching their capital widening steady state, where you can't really develop further than this, pushes them to rely on the next in line as such. And that can implode into conflicts of interest and geopolitical conflict as well, because when a country actually faces the need to rely on somebody else for their resources, there's naturally some tension between them. And this can spill over into a total stoppage of global trade. So in essence, this cash-up development would ideally lead to cutting-edge development and then back again, and it keeps going that way. But if countries choose to free ride, this can lead to confrontations and it can snowball into larger issues. And that's the theory as such. We will now move on to the policy critique, where we take a holistic view of economic factors and study how this two-period model can be a signal for policymakers to develop long-term climate action plans to effect coordinated climate investment, taking a holistic view of economic factors.
Right, as Sharik said, so now we move on to the policy perspective of what our regression and our theory tells us. So if you could move on to the next slide. What we notice is that from our regression model, clearly, there were higher marginal returns to be sought in developing countries, as is supported by the Solo model. That's what our regression model also tells us. Clearly, there's an opportunity cost then of developed countries investing in their own carbon productivity plans instead of providing support to developing countries. So clearly, there's a Pareto efficient FDI to be sought over here. And lastly, this FDI or this transfer could lead to leveling up the playing field, which can also be understood as a moral obligation for developed countries to provide support to developing countries so that they can sustain both their growth and achieve carbon emission targets, which is again as supported by our regression model too. However, every policy needs to be looked at closely, especially if we are implementing this on an international level. So Shaunak will take you through what the potential pitfalls could be of such a policy.
Shaunak, you're on mute just in case if you're speaking.
Hi, thanks. Yeah. So any policy that levels the international playing field necessarily inorganically modifies the status quo. And that hasn't had particularly good consequences in the past. So why might it be poor policy to channel funds one way? When we finance catch-up investment, we are essentially telling developed countries to give to hand development to developing countries on a platter. So this potential for immediate improvement and the attached opportunity cost of non-investment will progressively diminish with investment until both considerations become insignificant relative to the developed world. Essentially, everyone becomes developed, and that brings back the free rider problem. Further, global institutions and diplomatic forums in their current form are, for most part, unprepared to provide and sustain such incentives to induce fair participation. As such, this would entail developed economies handing their competitive advantage to developing countries on a silver platter. And finally, development is not necessarily a simple function of investment in domestic capabilities. Throwing money at a problem is a recipe for disaster, whether it will come in the form of hyperinflation, simple friction, or even some hitherto unobserved combination of systemic factors. Economics will catch up with such inorganic investment. So essentially, one-way financing is allocatively inefficient, and a net surplus for one party that said party is expected to pass on to the investor could potentially lead to market failure, because why would anyone pass on their value? And that would essentially be the climate cost of climate investment, that you invest in a manner that leads to missed targets when you could instead just focus on independent investment that allows you to meet slightly more conservative targets, but meet some targets at all. This brings us to the alternative. What does a two-period framework suggest that policies should follow? So economies with high carbon productivity can be treated as sinks for voluntary international investment, just as an innovative business would attract capital from financial markets. So venture capital of sorts. And securities can therefore be engineered to channel funds, as financial investments would be represented in monetary terms, reframing the subjective good of climate investment in standard economic terms, which provides better clarity on how money is spent as well. Such securitization will also foster greater international cooperation, as economies will find themselves in a position to meet their climate commitments through the best investment possible, as opposed to choosing domestic prospects that may be uneconomical given their domestic opportunity cost. And finally, developing countries, basically period one countries that wouldn't otherwise be able to engage in cutting edge development, will be able to support cutting edge development that is conducive to their issues. So the developing world is generally at the receiving end of climate impact. And if they get to choose what issues innovation.
Guys, your 15 minutes are over.
All right, thank you. So in conclusion, we've developed a two-period framework that applies to policy universally, and we've studied it from a climate perspective. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Shaunak and Rohan, for your presentation. Now I would like to call upon the judges for their questions. Judges, please go ahead.
Yeah, Shaunak and Rohan, it's a very interesting topic that you've picked up. Cost of climate investment. So basically, you're looking at green investment is, focus on green investment is what I assume you're doing. And here, I do not know, I'm not able to catch up actually as to how HDI can be a proxy for climate investment. I think that is one of the things that was said, that HDI was a proxy for climate investment, and that somehow I'm not able to take in, because standard theory, even if you tweak standard Solo's model, whether you can use HDI. So and the second thing, what are your control variables? Now you've shown a result. Now it's not sure whether you have done a panel across period of time or you done cross section with control variables, and then what your control variables are. The other thing is that you're saying that per capita capital investment is what you are talking of, right? So you're basically going, when you talk of all of this, whether it's period 1 or period 0, you're basically talking of Solo's convergence model. You're using the growth theory to see convergence. Okay. So simply put, then you have a period 0. So it should be very clear in your answer, in the model that you answer, in your results that you presented, what period of time that you've looked up. So what is your initial period? And you're comparing it to today, because that's allowing you the catch up. And incidentally, when you compare G7, the developed and the developing countries, as you rightly pointed out, the entire climate argument will not be in favor of developing countries. And which is why climate change talks across at different points of time have either, just stagnated or failed to come to a conclusion. Because, for example, you take as simple as ship breaking. More carbon footprint there, but no developed countries. So it is all ports like Gujarat and others in developing countries, Vietnam. These are the ones who do that. So basically, it's an unfair argument to make. So, and financial incentives may not always work, So I don't know whether you should have a quota regime, a physical target, or you must have a quantity or a quality regime. Price mechanism is something that price mechanisms do not always work. So with that, thank you.
Right.
Okay, to address your initial questions, so I think Rohan misspoke when he said Human Development Index. We actually mean carbon productivity to be the proxy of accumulated climate investment, in the sense that any country that's invested in carbon productivity will have invested in climate finance, because carbon productivity is essentially how efficient you are for your emissions, how much GDP you get per emission.
And then you're doing your catch-up model, right? So what is in the results? So other things, fine, doesn't matter. You can always answer it a little later. Maybe there are other questions. I understand that you're looking at climate finance, green finance, basically.
Right.
Thanks, Rohan and Shanak, for a super interesting presentation. I read your paper with a lot of interest, because I think it's very well written, and I think the model that you proposed also is quite interesting. But I think I have the sort of similar, maybe just a clarification that Professor Pati asked, which was just exactly how we are sort of proxying climate investments in that way using HDI. And I think that one thing that you can consider, like, this is not a question, it's more of just like a suggestion for future research, which is just thinking about if there is some measure of climate investment, like other than HDI, that maybe proxies how much countries are perhaps investing in, say, things like renewable energy or something like this. I don't know if that might maybe give you a better sense of how to capture something related to climate investments. But otherwise, yeah, super interesting paper then. Yeah, thanks.
If I may add, I think he just said that the HDI was misspelled. It is not HDI, right?
No, it was just a mistake in our presentation, as in we misspoke it. The way it's presented on this slide, that's the way it is. So carbon productivity is the proxy. HDI we just misspoke the acronym.
Right.
So there is no HDI in this model.
There is HDI, but it's not a proxy for accumulated climate investment.
So HDI does what role then, if I may just take this 1 second for you, if you can answer me.
HDI essentially defines the periods, as you spoke, period 0, period 1. So once you get to period 1, your HDI is also sort of uncorrelated to carbon productivity. I'll just bring that slide up. It might be easier then. Okay, there seems to be some. Rohan, would you like to take this question though?
Yeah, sure. So what we meant by proxy was not in the econometric terms, unlike we did for carbon productivity. Ultimately, what we are trying, as we discussed, and as you rightly pointed out, it's very hard to identify what a climate investment is. That's a center for debate, and I think that's a question that not only economists can answer, even scientists have to be involved in that discussion. what we are trying here is to show the relationship between HDI and carbon productivity, because we believe HDI contains the components of interest that would help us explain how carbon productivity is
Rohan, if I
availing of.
might interrupt you, you have
Right,
an
yeah, sorry.
equation to the right, okay?
Yes, yeah.
So now you're saying that carbon productivity is a function of HDI and control variables.
Right.
Okay. So if
Yes.
you're going to say that, then what are your control variables?
We have used state capacity over here as the control variable.
How do you
it's,
measure state capacity?
There's a state capacity index by
Okay.
HARE, which we have referenced
Okay.
in our study. So it takes together a lot of components to determine how effectively a government can introduce its
See,
policy.
my issue with this it's fine because HDI
Right.
itself is a component of 3 individual components.
Right.
Okay. So whether it is the education that is influencing climate change, whether it's a growth in per capita GDP that's influencing climate investment or green finance, or whether it is the health metric that is going to do it, life expectancy at birth, they can have very different effects. So it's just a thought. So if you want to take this further, then you need to think about this and then probably expand that. Because it's a composite index, I mean, yeah, that's it.
Right. I thank you for your feedback. We will definitely take that into account. We wanted a more comprehensive measure than GDP. That's why we introduced HDI. But I will certainly take your advice into account for future study. Thank you.
Hi, quick question before we run out of time. So, see, my question is regarding the distribution in climate investment that we see even for developing countries. Like, I'm not talking about developed countries vis-a-vis developing countries. In your assessment, were there differences, and were there significant differences even within developing countries when it comes to climate investment? Because that could be another offshoot from your paper. But, even within developing countries, their capacity to invest in to make climate investments or investments that can help reduce carbon footprint, I think that varies quite a bit, and I think that can be an important assessment within this framework. So did you come across any differences within the developing countries?
So as this slide depicts, basically, yeah, there is a significant disparity between developed countries, sorry, as we compare carbon productivity and their state of development. And then because, as we stated earlier, so state capacity becomes a good control variable for that very reason, as even though a country may be developed. So for example, in this, you see Italy in the same league as the US, and the state capacity of Italy is vastly different from the state capacity of US. And the general trend we notice is state capacity is actually negatively correlated. Now that's surprising because state capacity and HDI are positively correlated, as Swati ma'am mentioned, that HDI is composed of different metrics within itself, and some of those overlap with state capacity. So we would ideally expect a similar correlation between state capacity and carbon productivity, but that's not what's observed. And one possible explanation for that is that the more state capacity you have, the more power projection you can do. And the more power projection you can do, the more you can enforce your economic priorities on your neighbors or your political peers. And that suggests that you might not actually compromise on climate investment as much as your peers, which means your peers will be pushed to have greater carbon productivity by you, while you reap the benefit of that.
Yeah, sure. So my question was not for developed countries, it was for developing countries. So this, because you have this graph for developed countries, I'm asking for developing countries. Yeah, correct. Okay, better.
Oh, okay, sorry, my
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
So for developing countries, it's also similar. Now, over here, you notice that the highest are Mexico and Turkey. Now, despite their categorization as developing, their carbon productivity is a little higher because they've been westernized as such. So they've had a lot of Western technology coming in, Western investment coming in. And then that can be one factor that distinguishes between developing countries. Because if you look at the Asian countries and if you generally look at developing countries, the data set is a little lower. So
Right.
that's one implication of what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So I think one suggestion would be like because I saw these graphs and then since this wasn't, of course, there wasn't much time during the presentation to explain this in detail. One of my suggestions would be to uh, uh, assess this aspect, like the differences within the developing countries as well, because I think there has been some impetus on research within developing countries recently. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Yeah, we've actually highlighted that in our paper as an opportunity for further study, and we've also developed on that a little. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Rohan, and thank you, Shaunak. It was a very interesting presentation and an intense session as well. So now I would like to call upon Urs and Rachel if everything is fine. I believe Omkar sir will be presenting for them. So Rachel and Urs, all the best. And
Is
I
the
hope the
screen
presentation
visible?
goes well. Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yes, sir, yeah.
First
All
of
the
all,
best.
yeah, thank you so much. First of all, apologies for the network mishap. So we'd like to begin once again all over. I'm Rachel Batra and this is Ars Taneja, and we're here to present our research titled Oaxaca's Double-Edged Sword, Gender Wage Discrimination in India. So starting off, moving on to the first slide, please. To just introduce our topic, the gender wage gap has been a persistent concern within labor economics, and specifically in developing nations like that of India. There have been a lot of strides in gender equality, but it's like kind of bad that even today wage disparities persist. In our study, we employ the IHDS 2011, and we aim to identify factors that contribute to this gender wage gap in India. We then go on to use a blinder Oaxaca decomposition technique where we quantify the influence of various variables on the wage gap, accounting for rural and urban differences across India. And this study is a stride towards fostering gender equality and economic empowerment in India and in similar context of developing nations. Moving on to the next slide, please. A quick review at the literature. The gender wage gap has been defined by Golden as a summary statistic for gender differences at work. There have been a lot of reasons that are attributed to this gender gap, ranging from human capital differences and differential treatment of factors contributing to this gap. Discrimination has been characterized by sticky floor and glass ceiling when it comes to wages. Oaxaca defines discrimination against females based on relative wage comparisons across males and females. Moving on to the next slide, please. There have been a lot of theoretical insights that really explain why this gender gap exists. The first one is the very famous human capital theory introduced by Becker, which employs the importance of tangible factors like education, training, and experiences to explain the wage discrepancies that exist across genders. The next one is the theory of gender discrimination, which capsulates gender biases and societal norms that perpetuate across generations and in a way kind of get caught up in a virtuous loop. The next one is the concept of statistical discrimination by Phelps, which again emphasizes how societal norms are somehow caught up in this negative cycle, and it is very difficult to break beyond this. The next one is the theory of institutional discrimination, which basically again focuses on the fact that how institutions can play a crucial role in creating gender wage disparities. The next one is the segmentation theory. It basically says that how conventional occupations get associated with genders, and again this perpetuates across generations and acts as a driver of wage differences. The final one is the role of cultural and social factors, particularly evident in the Indian context, whereby a lot of gendered institutions as defined by Aker kind of worsens and exacerbates the wage gap. Another one is the social identity theory, whereby again we have identities associated with genders, and these identities go into the workplace and again worsens the current situation of gender disparities in the labor market. Moving on to the next slide. There have been a lot of unique patterns that come forth from developing nations. For example, a larger segment of women are working in informal sectors. A lot of empirical investigations often use data from sources like NSSO to cite these kind of studies. And a notable trend to follow is how the gender wage gap has been narrowing in India between the particular period period as seen on the screen, particularly due to the fact that there have been increasing returns for labor force, female labor force participation in the Indian labor market. Moving on to the next slide. The data and variables for our study are the dependent variable is a natural logarithm of hourly wage. And just to mention, the data set we're using is IHDS 2011, as mentioned before. And it spans, as you can see on your screen, households, both rural and urban areas. The dependent variable is a natural logarithm of wage. And how we've calculated is that an individual working more than 240 hours a week is considered to be a part of the workforce. The independent variables are the individual's education, which has been captured by the maximum level of education achieved in years. The potential experience is individual's age minus education level -5, which is in context with the literature review. Demographic variables like gender, place of residence, and marital status have been captured using a dummy, and the financial positions have been represented by total household assets. We've also accounted for the number of children between the 0 to 14 age group, as well as the elderly age group that lies above 65 in the household. Moving on to the next slide. So we've applied the modified Mincer regression analysis, and then we've used the Blinder-Oaxaca decomposition technique to estimate the wage function across males and females to decompose the wage differential into three particular effects, namely the endowment effect or the observable effect, the coefficient effect, which is the unobservable effect, also claimed to be the potential discrimination, which ours will explain briefly following up my part, and the third one being the interaction effect, which explains the interaction between the observable endowment effect and coefficient or unobservable effect. Moving on to the next slide, please.
All right, so results and analysis. Table 1 presents the descriptive statistics for the households from IHDS2. We see that the average number of people was 6.1 in rural and 5.8 in urban areas. Average age of the respondent was 29.3 and 30.8 years in rural and urban respectively. Average assets, which the IHDS measures using a checklist of tangible items such as vehicles, TV, fan, etc., wherein each item is given a score out of like 0 and 1, and then the net score is calculated for the household so that the index is computed between 0 to 30. So the average score of that index was 13.6 in rural areas and 20 in urban households. Then education level of respondents measured in years was 4.5 in rural and 6.8 in urban. Figure 1 gives the distribution of log hourly wage by gender. We see that it is positively skewed as expected, with the right tail being heavier for men as compared to women, indicating that there are larger proportion of men with relatively higher wages. To show this in data, we have table 3, which represents the measures of duration, that is a number of days worked per year, and the total work hours per year, as well as the average hourly wage by gender. We see that the difference in the mean of each of the variable, difference being taken as male minus female, is significant at a 1% level, all in favor of men, which again is backed by literature. Next slide, please. So building on the last table, we compare the difference in the proportion of men and women employed in various work categories in table 2. Here, work, again, as Rachel mentioned, is taken as participating in the activity for over 240 hours in a year based on the IHDS definition. Again, all our variables are significant at a 1% level, difference being in favor of men minus women, except animal care, which favors women. This can be seen as because animals are usually kept closer to home, and naturally women who tend to bear the responsibility of their care, especially in rural areas. Now, table 4 reports the modified Mincer regression results. Dependent variable over here, as mentioned before, is the natural log of hourly wage. Here, experience, also as mentioned before, is age minus years of schooling minus 5. We find that the education level, experience, and total household assets capturing the financial background of the family are all positively and significantly affecting our dependent variable, all at a 1% level. That is, they help in increasing wages. Moving on, the variables in our regression. Can you go to the previous slide, please? Apologies for that. Yeah. The variable in our regression are on average able to explain 33 to 34% of the variation in our dependent variables in models 1 and 2, that is for urban men and urban women. However, these variables are only able to explain 19% of the variation for rural men and a much lower 11% of the variation for rural women. Moving on to the next slide. Right. So using the previous regressions, we employ the blinder Oaxaca decomposition at an all India, rural and urban level. The dependent variable, as before, is log of hourly wages. Now, the first two rows gives the mean of the log wage for men and women respectively. The third row gives the difference between them, that is men minus women. We find that the wage differential is highest at an all India level, standing at 0.496, with rural and urban not far behind at 0.453 and 0.454 respectively. Again, to reiterate, these differences are in the log of hourly wages, not the wage itself. Now, interpretation of rows 4 and 5 are as follows. If women had men's endowments, their wages would increase by 0.17 units at an all India level. This is also known as the endowment effect or the observed or explainable effect. In contrast, if women had men's estimated coefficients, their wages would increase by a much higher 0.33 units. This is the coefficient or the unexplained effect. Now, the coefficient of the regression captures how, for a certain gender, their endowments translates into their wages. So by extent, so for women having their own endowments, if they were allowed to use men's coefficients, by what extent would their wages increase? Meaning, so for the same endowments, how is there a different treatment for men and women? So this is 0.33 at an all India level. We also find that the interaction effect, which gives the simultaneous interaction between the two effects, is 0.006 at a, and only significant at a 10% level. In proportion terms, 34% of our overall wage differential in the data is explained by endowment effect or the explainable effect, whereas a larger 66% is due to potentially discriminatory and unexplained differences. As you can see, proportions of the urban level are roughly same as the all India level, but at the rural level, we find a much higher proportion of the wage gap is due to unobservable factors, which are also potentially discriminatory. This may be indicative of effects due to social and cultural norms as discussed in our literature, which may be stronger in rural areas vis-a-vis urban households. Now, why do I say that this is potentially discriminatory factors? Because this is a limitation of the Oaxaca blinder decomposition analysis. This is because the coefficient effect is due to unobserved or unexplained factors. So it may also include the effects of variables not included for in our model. But this does, by even in qualitative terms, this does indicate discriminatory behaviors as well. Now, all our results are in line with Sarkel and Agarwal, who did a similar analysis in India using IHDS round 1. Next slide, please.
Now, moving on to the conclusion of our research study, we were able to employ the Osaka decomposition technique and understand the observable and unobservable factors that contribute to the gender wage disparities in India. Some of the key takeaways in terms of the sphere of policy would be to implement a good policy mix of both tangible and intangible laws. When it comes to tangible, it could be in line with like Becker had put forth about providing better education, training, and not just in terms of quantity, but also the quality that we are providing to the upcoming workforce of the country. And intangible returns could be anti-discriminatory laws or paternal leaves, for that matter of fact, to name a few. A good policy mix of both tangible and intangible factors would perhaps be the way forward for a developing nation like that of India. And with that, we'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rachel, it was a very good presentation, I must say. Thank you so much for presenting. Now it's up to the judges to ask the questions.
Very interesting presentation, Rachel and ours. Yeah, Rachel and ours. Yeah. I think use of unit level data at this level of research is really, really very encouraging. And I think you should go ahead. My only feeling is that you have used IHDS 2011. Yes. And maybe if you want to take this further, just this one suggestion, that if you want to take this further, then maybe you could use the latest PLFS data and see whether your coefficients, unit level, because now PLFS also micro data is available pretty easily. It's just that you have to invest time, maybe post your graduation, to look at how to interpret NSS data, PLFS data. And possibly you might see whether the discrimination is more or less. And if you do PLFS and from 2017-18 to the latest, possibly you can even track whether discrimination in the first, because 2011 by now is pretty dated. So maybe you should have, that's the only suggestion that I have. Anyway, all the best. Very interesting and good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thanks, Arz and Rachel. So yeah, super interesting work, and I think I echo, what Professor Swati said about this. I think it's sort of the kind of research that I think really gives us hope in terms of knowing that there are people who are doing research, I think, in a fairly rigorous way at your level. So I guess my only question was sort of more related to a bit that you mentioned about your literature on social norms and cultural beliefs and things of that nature. So if you had to test, say, the role of social norms using this model, like how would you go about doing it? Like, let's say that you still take IHDS, but if there was a way that maybe you wanted to test a little bit about social norms and see if, because I guess that 65% that you're talking about is a very large number, right? So we do want to see if we can maybe try and put some tags on it. So do you have any thoughts on that in terms of like what you could do?
So this is not our thought per se, but we were reading when we were doing our literature review, we came upon another paper by Sarkel. She had to kind of control for the social norms using the decomposition analysis. She had created this patriarchy index. So women in the IHDS, they have like a women round itself also. So they're asked questions about what kind of like how much autonomy do you have, are you able to contribute to like financial household decisions, so things like that. Their answer, she's computed into this patriarchy index. So she'd controlled for that in her analysis of the decomposition analysis, and she did find that this was a very significant factor, especially. So this kind of also shows that yes, there is discrimination due to this unexplained effects, but there is also these social norms which do impact. So that is, I think, one thing we can maybe further work on, add on to our research. But I'm sure there are more ways we can also kind of look to. So this was just like at the micro level, at the household level, cultural norms. But there are cultural norms which are at the workplace, maybe. Or women being kind of segregated into certain occupations. So if we can maybe kind of control for that also, we'll definitely.
Yeah, because another interesting question that actually struck us when we were researching is certain occupations, you just see men working in those occupations. So it's very striking as to how that's been perpetuating across generations. And there's absolutely no reason. There might absolutely be no reason for that, but it just exists. So to be able to question that through these kind of techniques like ours mentioned, I think would be a nice way to explore this domain. But yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for that. I just have one suggestion in that way. So one idea that I had is maybe to look at North-South. There's two different regions that have differing social norms. So you could probably split them. I'm thinking also of the statistical power that you guys will have when you're keeping in mind that. So maybe you could just do sort of subgroup analysis for North households and South households, because the social norms are different. There is some literature that suggests that. And you could probably, yeah. But thanks, all the best for this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Rachel and Urs, I have way too many questions or way too many suggestions. This is just, and I just realized I forgot to respond to your mail. Also, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for that. But I definitely get, for the benefit of the audience, Rachel and Urs had also inquired about using human opportunity index, which is something I have worked on in my PhD thesis. And again, apologies, I should have gotten back to you sooner. I'm sorry. Yeah. But okay, sorry, getting back to the your presentation, very interesting work. Hopefully we'll get IHDS 3 by the end of this year. I've been waiting for it for years now.
No.
Yeah, it's been way too long. But the good thing is, because you have work done with IHDS 2 already, I'm sure you have the codes ready. The moment you get IHDS 3, just get on it.
Yes,
I
we'll
think-
update it.
yeah. And I think all the comments that you've gotten so far are extremely relevant. For instance, what Swati ma'am suggested, like take up PLFS. Of course, it will not be comparable to IHDS because, but it will help you do away with the more dated data set issue. And again, PLFS, because there are subsequent years from 2017, you'll be able to sort of create a pooled cross section. So that would be interesting. And then also the good thing is that you've taken 240 hours of work to be for an individual to be considered a working adult, because that will make it very easy for you to correlate that with the principal activity status in PLFS. So I think that is one thing. The other thing is I would suggest that why don't you use IHDS 1 and IHDS 2, because it's a panel, right? So just get all the benefits out of the panel, because what you can do is you can use the panel along with the fact that you get information about social norms, right? So one part of the paper could be regarding the panel using the available information about social norms, which will help you address the point which Anirudh was speaking about. So one part is done. Then you are using PLFS also, so you'll get done with that as well. And as far as, I mean, if you use PLFS, if you work with IHDS, I don't think PLFS will be an issue for you. So yeah, so I think that was about it. And also in terms of the decomposition techniques, OAKA blinder, of course, very interesting. But there are a lot, quite a few other decomposition techniques which you can use to substantiate your work. So you can do dominance analysis. You can, again, shapely decomposition is sort of dated, but it's the sort of thing which can help you answer question on occupational differences between men and women. Then again, too many ideas because you can also,
Please name it again, the name.
Shapely decomposition.
You know what? I have to respond to your mail. I'll send it to you over the mail.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yes, ma'am.
And the other thing was also regarding what you mentioned about the occupational structure that you see different for men and women. Because again, there's quite a lot of work done on intergenerational occupational as well as educational mobility for men and women in India. So that could be something that you can use in your literature review, or that could be another offshoot of your paper. But yeah, there's quite a lot of work that you can do. So all the best.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Now, I would like to request the judges to send their score sheets to the email address yerc@meghnaddesaicacademy.org. I would share the email address again just in case if it's required. And
So one person hasn't come, is it? Lamba and Sharma?
yes, they are not in the meeting.
They're
now.
absent, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So while they are sending, after they've sent the score sheets to the email address, I would like to also call the judges and say a few words how they felt about the competition and how was their experience. Judges, please go ahead.
Now we change the ordering.
Yeah, so Shrishti, I guess you have to.
All right. Okay. So I'm quite actually pleasantly surprised with the kind of presentations that were made today, and very happy, very, I think it was a very good use of Saturday morning. So, but apart from that, I think even with the papers that looked at geopolitical conflict, I think because we looked at such different dimensions of the same theme, I think that sort of helped us have a very rounded debate on that. So, and in terms of other topics that was taken up as well, climate change, or whether it was about gender inequality, gender wage inequality, I think very interesting work. And I just have like a couple of comments to make here and there, especially because these bunch, like you guys are still in your bachelor's, so very impressed with the kind of work that you've done and presented. So I think one thing that I feel was something maybe lacking or something that could be worked on is impetus on literature review and how that can be used to motivate your question better. Because one thing that I felt was that the research question wasn't in a few presentations or across board actually, the research question wasn't as clearly mentioned as it should be or as it can be, because see what happens is when you're in a 15-minute presentation, sometimes what you want is to be told that this is my research question, just so there is no scope of doubt. So I think that is something that needs to be worked on, and literature review is a very key element in the audience understanding how did you reach this part, whether it is regarding the research question, whether this is regarding the covariates that you the covariates that you used in your analysis, or even like the interpretation of results, because you can contextualize your results in review. So I think that is something that maybe all of you can again look at, and actually all of us can also again look at, because I also have the tendency of skipping literature review at the same time. Then the other thing is, even while you're presenting, even if it's a statistic that you're sourcing from some other document citing, write the citation, because at times it can be a bit confusing as to whether this was your own work, whether you're citing, where did this information come from. So citation is extremely important even within presentation. So if there is something, some major statement or some fact that you're including in your presentation, it needs to be cited. Okay. So yeah, actually, this is it. I think these were a couple of comments I had. Had a great day listening to your presentations, and yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with, I think, Shresti, and like in terms of the inputs that she had on research presentation, I think that that's something that we could all certainly benefit from. Like even to this day, when I present papers with my colleagues or something else, like I mean these are sort of useful things to keep in mind. And I think that, yeah, I'm incredibly, I think, privileged that that Shresti asked me to be part of this, and I think I was last part of this maybe 2 years ago or something like this, and I can sort of see a very clear sort of improvement in the quality of papers that we've received, and I think that's only telling. From a broad perspective.
I think Anirudh, you were not audible for a while.
Oh, sorry. Is this any better?
Yeah, this is better.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think something wrong with the internet, but yeah, I think I was just saying that it's something that really says that there's I think great potential for doing this kind of research in India, and I'm really glad that there's a forum like YERC to I think showcase some of this work. I guess one thing is that probably to think about I think the topics that you're all working on I think in a more careful sort of rigorous way. I think the best way to look for, so this is something that I sort of always suggest to people who are looking for research ideas. So I think in the case of YRC, we give you sort of a theme or sort of a broad idea or set of ideas that you can work on. But I think it's always useful to look at literature that interests you particularly. Just look at some papers and go straight to the end, right? So go straight to the end and see the conclusion section, see what researchers have to say about where that gap is, right? What has the study not done? And I think that's a useful starting point for, of course, go back and read the rest of the paper also. But, in the conclusions is where you find, what's missing. And I think that's a useful place to start. And I think when you do that, like at least in a few of the papers that we saw today, I think it was very nice to see that that there was this intention to really contribute to the research gap that might exist. And I think that that's a valuable place to start, because then you no longer have a sense of how do I make this unique, how do I make this novel. Your idea itself is novel, and I think from there you can only sort of do good. But yeah, thanks again for all the wonderful presentations.
Okay, so a very good congratulations to all the paper presenters. All papers were, this is my first experience with YERC, and I should say I'm really impressed at the quality of presentations that have been made. There were far too many papers on geopolitics, but I think a comparative analysis showed that everyone had, uniquely captured different areas. So, and I think those are also papers, those were also topics where it's not much prone to, individual research, because much of the data is available, and therefore, as Dr. Shreshti said, that it's better to, have your citations in place. But on the whole, a very interesting interaction also. And I think in looking forward, people should be encouraged, students, younger students, to encourage to do more unit level research, quantification, regression, because it's taught under the NEP in different schools and colleges and universities in India. So I think that's where we should head as we go forward. Review of literature, what my suggestion would be is always keep a slide ready after the thank you. So in case somebody does ask you, you can always pull it out of your pocket. That's a trick that I often enough use. And what I noticed about several students, but they are very young and will improve, I'm sure, with exposure and time, is that your slides were limited. And so you had by hearted your paper. So there was a disconnect between, the points on the paper and what you were saying. So I think you will overcome that with time. It's very encouraging. And one must also learn to present better, much of it. So it was really very good, great experience. Thank you so much, and best wishes to all. I'm sure that we will see them as young future researchers in economics as we go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Shreshti, do we end this?
I think we'll just I've sent the score sheets to the email ID.
Yeah.
Yes,
You...
ma'am, we are preparing it.
Okay,
They're
okay.
preparing
I
it, and
think,
you will
yeah.
see when you have to announce the results as well.
Oh, okay, okay. Is it to be done immediately? Okay.
Yes, so I think we'll just wait for a couple of minutes, because I think the RAs are already on it, and then I request.
Oh, I haven't done it, so I'll just send mine. Just allow.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll just come in here. Am I audible? This is a Bhagyashree
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
And my God, there is a network issue at my place, and I just couldn't. But I am here throughout, and I'm listening to all the paper presentations, and I must thank the students who have taken so much effort to prepare the papers, research papers, and present today, and also the judges, because the panel of judges we have, I think, also makes a lot of difference, because they all are experts in their fields. Having Swati with us, who has so much research experience, Anirudh, as well as our own professor. So that has enriched this competition further. Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics is hosting this event for last almost 7 years. And every year I'm seeing that it is enriching. I see the papers are maturing. I mean, that shows the amount of interest the youngsters are taking in research. And we do conduct this to give more exposure to students in research work and inculcate more research aptitude in them. And I think I see that is what is happening today. So I'm very happy about it. Yeah, and I thank everybody who is present here. I thought I'll just come in and mention this to all. Thank you, everybody. But of course, we'll wait for the results to be announced. Brilliant exercise today. I really enjoyed listening to everybody. Really good. Everybody, as in the papers, as well as the comments from the judges, it has added a lot of value to all the papers. Thanks, everyone, once again. Yeah. So we'll wait for the results to be announced. It's going to be tough, I'm sure. It must have been tough for the judges, because all the papers were really very good. So students, you must take this forward and continue with your research, all those who are participating here today, because research is very, very important aspect of education. And unfortunately, that is missing. But that was my belief. But I think today, I must say that, no, it's still alive amongst the students and amongst the youngsters. So keep it up. Thanks. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Oh.
Ma'am, Swati ma'am, have you sent the score sheet to the RH? You're on
Ma'am,
mute.
you're mute.
Give me a minute and I will do it because I just thought it has to come later. I mean, I didn't realize that.
Okay, okay. Yeah, sure. What I can do meanwhile is while you send this post, what I can do is I can just announce what results we have, like for the what are the different prizes. So the first prize is it's a cash prize of 10,000 rupees each for each of the participants in the team, and then we also offer scholarship of 1 lakh rupees for each team member for our PGD program. The second prize is cash prize of rupees 5,000 each for each of the team members, and a scholarship of rupees 75,000 for each team member for our PGD program. The third prize is an Amazon gift voucher, again of rupees 2,500 for each of the participants. And we also offer scholarship of rupees 50,000 for each of our team members, again for the PhD program. The fourth and fifth prize is Amazon gift voucher of 1,500 each, and again a 25,000 scholarship for our PhD program. So yeah, let's wait for the results to be announced and see who gets the Amazon vouchers. I think that's what I am most interested in. Sorry.
Give me a second, I'll just post it. I'm almost there.
Yeah, sure. I think we have already given the email ID in the chat, and I've also made it to you.
Yeah. YERC. Yeah, I've sent it. It's sent.
Okay.
Hi, Swati. Sorry, I couldn't meet you in the beginning. Yeah.
No, it's okay. How are you? Doing
Yeah,
good?
I'm good. Yeah. How are you? Must be busy, no?
Yeah, now towards the end, it's exams, no?
Yeah. But with this NEP, I think I see all the college teachers are extremely busy nowadays.
NEP, yes. You know, lots more work, 2 credit courses. At the undergraduate, I think the pressure is more because they have their open electives, basket.
Mm-hmm.
So we are not that pressurized, but yes, but we have faculty strength, which is a problem. Lot more than, you know, the DC faculty.
True. Mm.
But it was really an interesting morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, this our competition has reached pan-India now, you know, having
Okay.
students from all parts like Delhi, Hyderabad.
So what is the
Bangalore.
initial number of applications that you get for YERC?
In the beginning, we had about 80 abstracts.
Okay.
Yeah. From that, we shortlisted about 30.
Okay.
And then from that, again, we shortlisted. And the final presentations up to final level, we have about these
7 or 8, yeah.
7 or 8,
So
yeah.
from 30 to 7, so you get almost
Yeah.
three times, more than 3 times, I
Yeah.
think, 4 times. That's interesting. But there are young people interested in doing work.
Yeah, I mean, true. And our students are also working very hard on it, you know, helping us in shortlisting the abstracts and sending emails, doing
Okay.
small things. Yeah, they are also very actively involved.
Okay.
But they
But
don't. They
you have
don't
only the
participate.
1 year program, no? Then
Ours is
9 months.
yeah. We have two programs now, one in economics and the other one is in data science and finance.
Yeah, that I, yeah.
But in economics program also we have data courses. So, you know.
Okay. Even we have, under NEP, even we have the department have tried.
Okay.
But yeah, it's difficult to get people to teach.
Like we teach a course in Python, R programming, then machine learning.
Yes, and we have all that. Yeah. NEP has brought a lot of change.
Okay.
Swati ma'am, I'm so sorry to interrupt in between, but I believe we haven't received your.
I just sent YERC. Of course, I've sent.
Actually, so just a minute,
And
I'll
you
get
want me
back
to
to
send
them.
it again?
If
Ma'am,
possible,
yeah,
please.
what you can do is you can send it to my email ID also. I'll just forward it to them.
Okay.
In case there is any address issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has it come, Shrishti? I've sent it to you. I've forwarded. There is no mail. It's just an attachment that I have sent because of the.
Let me just quickly check. Yes, I just got it. Vandan and Sridhar, I have sent it on the YERC email.
Yeah, ma'am, we are going through it.
Thanks.
So, audience, any guesses? Who is going to get who is going to be the winner? No guesses? Till we actually get the final results in hand.
I think it was pretty close this time.
Yeah, it must have been tough for you all to judge really. Anyway, I always say winning is not important as much as participating is, you know. So
I agree.
You all are
Outcomes
winners.
are never in our hand.
So you students, you all are winners, okay?
Also, I think at undergraduate level, presenting like this, I think as I said, very impressive, and I think it can be very nerve-wracking also to present your papers that you've been recently working on. So
No, Shreshi, this generation is very, very smart in doing all that. Yes. They are very smart in presentations, in technology. Because you also belong to them, not that you are very senior to them, but still. Swati, you'll have off on all Saturdays or only
No, we worked the fourth Saturday because there was a Senate meeting.
Okay.
So today the university has given us a compensatory off. Actually, more than teachers, it is for the staff. But if staff don't come, then nobody opens the doors. So everybody is there, staff.
That's how you are free today. So like good for
Yeah.
us.
Otherwise, mornings are fine. Saturdays, we don't have lectures except those who want to take extra class. So 1, 3, and 5 is what we work. So.
Okay.
In this competition, was there anybody from Meghnad Desai who was participating? No.
No, our students don't participate. Yeah. I was just thinking, you know, next year should we also ask them to participate, you know. Why should we deprive them? But from the beginning, we have kept them. I mean, they are not a part of it.
No, you
They help
cannot
us.
have an undergrad and a postgrad student.
Yeah.
I mean, then you have to open it to many, all postgrads.
Correct.
Then it will become, then the undergrads might get cut out.
Yeah, it will go at a different level then. That is
Yes.
also one reason. But sometimes some students keep asking, you know, ma'am, why can't we take part? But
So
we
maybe
have to
another
limit
one with
for that.
postgraduate students only.
Yeah, we can do that.
But it's a lot of organizations, it's easier said than done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes on almost for 3-4 months, you know, right from selecting the topics, sending them, you know, all that work.
The areas, the thrust areas.
Yeah. Yeah. And shortlisting, then first inviting for the abstracts, then shortlisting them, then the papers, then again getting them reviewed.
Correct.
And all the teachers who help us, they all are very busy in their own colleges.
Yes.
We literally have to beg them to help us out in this, you know.
Correct.
Yeah, but they are doing it for quite some time.
I think everyone likes to support, you know, research activity.
Yeah, true.
But it's just that all are caught up in their own deadlines.
Absolutely.
And college teachers, poor things, they put in something like 18 hours a week. And
True.
very difficult.
And if you are in the exam committee, then it goes on and told throughout the year assessment work.
Exam committee is the worst committee to be on. You know, because the exam committee technically does what the exam house of the university does, and they have a plethora of people, and here there are just 2 people doing it. Of course, the number of students are few. Ask me, I have been on it for the last 15 years, and every 6 weeks you're giving doing something. It's like a continuously overworked committee, you know.
Now with
Results, then past students and their problems.
And also with this continuous assessment which we have now, that also keeps you busy, you know.
And that ABC of credits, no, which under the NEP. So clearing credits, this, that. So how's it otherwise, Bhagyashree? Going good? You go to the academy every week, once or twice? I can't hear you. I think you're mute.
I was on mute, sorry. No, I don't go regularly now. I mostly work from home.
Okay.
Once in a way I do. But that keeps me in touch, you know, with
The subject and activity.
Absolutely.
And what happened to that lady from St. Xavier's who used to be there? I forget her name.
Yeah, no, she moved on long back.
Okay. I forget her name though. What was her name?
Salazar, no? Salazar, yeah. She found it difficult to commute and all. Then
okay.
She moved on. I forget her first name. I don't remember.
It's a very different name.
Yeah.
It was Hermione.
Hermione.
Absolutely, yeah. You know her, Anuruddha?
Well, my brother and my partner, they both studied at Xavier. So in a way,
Okay.
I ended up looking at their notes as well as mine. So
Oh, got it.
She was quite legendary in Xavier's.
Yeah.
yeah.
She, Professor Nadkarni,
Hmm.
these are all legendary Xavier's.
True.
And that Fraser, I think, Father Fraser.
Other place, yeah. And one more person in the Department of Economics. Yeah. I don't remember his name. He is also a very well-known person.
Professor Agnello.
Yeah.
Aggie.
Yeah.
What's his name? What did you say?
Agnello Menezes.
Yeah.
No, that I
He's
don't.
still there.
Okay, there's it. Okay.
Okay.
But now Xavier's has a very different mix of teachers.
It's a
Excuse
very
me, ma'am. We've corrected the scores and mailed it on the ID. So, Shrishti ma'am, you can check it once.
Yeah. Actually, it's been sent to all the judges and Bhagyashree ma'am. So I would request Dr. Swati and Dr. Anirudh to announce the results.
Anirudh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead, ma'am. That's
No,
totally fine.
where is
So,
it? Let me just check. 1 second. I have to check it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's been sent on the email ID.
Yes.
On your-
Bhagyashree, would Dr. Bhagyashree please do the honors? You are the senior most amongst us.
No, you're.
No, go ahead. You are the
No,
senior.
you do it. You do
No,
it.
you please go ahead and do it.
No.
Nine.
You are the judge today, so it's your privilege.
So the first, let me just go back to my email. So congratulations to everybody. And the first prize goes to Ars Taneja and Rachel Batra. The second winner is Shaunak Kulkarni and Rohan Dubey. And the third winner is Shubhalakshmi Darshini and Sharad Yadav. So really, congratulations, Rachel and Ars, Shubhalakshmi and Yadav. And the third person, the second one was, I have to think, Shaunak and Rohan. Tough competition, close call, but.
Ma'am, can I request you to please also announce the fourth and fifth rank?
Okay, you require that also? Okay. The fourth ranker is Shaina Bedi and Ramona Sharma. And the fifth is Aditi Walia and Tanishka Mathur. So, congratulations to all.
Yeah.
Congratulations, everyone.
Congrats, everyone.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Yeah.
Congratulations, everyone. It was a wonderful event and you all were amazing. You all did a great job.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. You all have to say something, last one second
Yeah.
or whatever you want to say, apart from your presentations.
Yeah, anybody.
You're mute.
Anybody who wishes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We've been preparing for this from January, and it's been a very exciting journey so far. We also really enjoyed looking at all the presentations of all the contestants here today, and would like to say congratulations to the winners and the participants both. Thank you very much.
Anyone else who wants to say anything?
I think we'd just like to thank everyone who was present and thank you for providing us with this platform where we could share our research with people from different parts of the country. It was truly very intriguing and we've learned a lot and there are a lot of takeaways. So once again, thank you so much, everyone.
Shaunak, Rohan, would you like to say something?
Yeah, it was really a pleasure being here. I definitely got to learn a lot from not just the judges, but from the other papers as well. And we have got really great feedback, so we'll incorporate that and build on our research. So thank you once again for this opportunity.
I think some papers are of publishable quality, so some of them can really think of working a little more on them with your feedback, and probably send it to a good journal. So it will be a good start to a postgraduate program and further research.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion, Swati, for all of them. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so since we are almost done, I would like to now invite Vaishnavi ma'am to give a vote of thanks, and then we end. Vaishnavi ma'am, over to you.
Hello, everyone. First of all, congratulations to the winners and also to the participants. Myself, Vaishnavi Patil. I am a teaching fellow at Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. I stand before you with a sense of deep gratitude and profound honor. Today, we have witnessed an intellectual fest, a conference of ideas, and a celebration of the spirit of scientific inquiry at the 8th edition of the Young Economist Research Competition. Firstly, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed judges, Dr. Swati Raju ma'am, Dr. Anirudh Tagal, and Dr. Shreshti Rawat. Your presence and expertise have not only enriched this competition, but also inspired our young researchers to strive for excellence. I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to the academic consultants, Professor Sarita Jaishankar, Professor Anjali, Professor Ishita Ghosh, Professor Paramjeet Chawla, Professor Aditi Abhyankar, Professor Ishita Ghoshal, Professor Malti Rao, who have worked tirelessly to shortlist the research papers for this final round. Your expertise and dedication have been invaluable in ensuring the high standard of this competition. To all the participants, your innovative research projects have truly been a testament of your dedication, creativity, and intellectual prowess. You have shown us that the future of research is very bright and promising. Thank you for your hard work and the knowledge you have shared. We are deeply grateful to our academy, Dr. Tushar Poddar sir, Dr. Bhagyashree Dapke ma'am, Professor Amlesh Kanekar, and our esteemed board members for their unwavering support and encouragement to this competition. Your commitment to fostering a culture of research and innovation that has been instrumental in the success of this event. A special thanks to our organizing committee, our RAs for YERC, that is Anshuman, Ladini, Monalisha, Vandan, Shridat, and also other volunteers for their tireless efforts in ensuring the smooth conduct of this competition. I would also like to say thank you to Omkar for providing the technical support in arranging this on the online platform. Everyone's dedication and commitment are greatly appreciated. Lastly, but most importantly, I would like to thank the audience for being a part of this intellectual journey. Your presence and enthusiasm have been made this event a great success. As we conclude, let us carry forward the spirit of this scientific inquiry, the thirst for knowledge, and the passion for innovation and research that this competition has kindled in us. Thank you, everyone, for making this event a memorable one. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Congratulations once again to all.
Yeah, congratulations to
Thanks.
everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks. Congrats again. Bye.